There's only one way now. Further up and further in.
I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he's expecting to wake up.
Welcome, everybody. This is Team Rabbit Hole Edition 317 with Will Morgan. I am the Meta Eggman. What a title, Jim. Welcome, Will.
I don't know if you like the Beatles, Will, but when I saw your
I
YouTube,
am the Eggman.
yeah,
Eggman.
the
We could
meta,
go with Beastie Boys too, right? Like Eggman, Eggman, Eggman. Yeah, I
Well,
guess. I mean, that makes sense. It's weird. I don't know if like you're familiar with the symbolism of the egg or whatever, but it's a thing that's kind of like followed me for a long time.
it
And then
has. Hold on,
trying to
before we
come up
jump down that rabbit hole, because I know where you're going with this, and it's definitely some of your more recent research. Because I remember in the past year or so, you've been like the egg. So before we get too far into it, this is episode 37. It's Will Morgan. I've been aware of this monkey for a hot minute, but finally getting him on. So join the. I am the Meta Eggman. Join the team as we get to know Will, a long-time synchromystic, showing people the metaphysical Easter eggs he has discovered along the yellow brick road of popular culture. And what we do typically on the beginning of these is pull a card for the episode. And I mean, it is what it is. It's the Ten of Swords, which is a pretty heavy card. I think it actually syncs up with my birthday, June 17th, as the card for some system of some kind. But it says, I must evolve. It's the end of a way of thinking, breaking free from the person you once were, releasing things which no longer serve you, and choosing responsibility by reclaiming your power. What, if anything, resonates or syncs up for you on that? Like I said, I think it is my birthday card, unfortunately.
So say it again, like reclaiming your power. What was before that?
I gotta evolve. I mean, in the card, this guy's been on our podcast a few times.
Because it's usually like the Ten of Swords is usually like a guy on the ground, right, with swords all stuck in his back.
Yeah,
right?
These guys are getting impaled, and it's like transferring his life force, basically like change or die. I must evolve.
So it's kind of like, I mean, do you read that as more like a cocoon type of like chrysalis or whatever? Like it's not necessarily about death; it's about metamorphosis. Is that what you're saying?
Well, swords are like the mind, right? And it's the completion. It's the
Right.
10. So it's the finality of a way of thinking. So it's like a certain time. It's like, hey, I was in high school and I've been in Alabama my whole life, and now I've gotten into whatever UC Davis in California, and I'm gonna go. You know what I mean? It's just like a shifting of a way of thinking.
Right.
And
Well, like
in a sense,
the old you is definitely like on the chopping block, so to speak.
your mind, at least, yeah. So it's, I mean, it's whatever. Even in the Matrix, it's like, Mr. Anderson, we have your file. Just shut up and keep working. And then it's like Morpheus or whatever. It's like, you want to go down the rabbit hole? So that changes things. Go ahead, Rafa.
What does that have to do with June 17th? I mean, I guess that would be Gemini, right?
Yeah, it's my birthday. I just had my 40th birthday, but I'm pretty sure, I don't even know what card system. Maybe one Raphael was tuned into or something. But these correspond to deacons, signs and degrees and stuff. And I am in the last bit of Gemini, and this is the 10 of Swords. It's not something I'm happy about. I had just read somewhere at some point, or maybe it's like, damn, of all the cards, I can't be like, 10 of Cups or something awesome. It's like, nope.
My daughter's birthday is the day before. My daughter's birthday is 6/17. So wait, it's June 17th.
Yeah, that's 6/6.
Birthday, so it's the same day. It's the same day.
You got a Gemini girl on your hands.
Oh, it's a fucking nightmare. Sorry, no offense, Gemini. But
it's all good.
I mean, it kind of makes sense. You and I have known each other. There was some apparent static because we had been blocked, but neither of us know really why we had blocked each other.
Okay, we could start. Okay, so because I want to hear about your life and stuff, but for context, I guess I should say this. Back in 2015, maybe 2013, actually, around there, I started waking up doing a lot of acid, listening to McKenna and Alan Watts and crazy stuff. And I wasn't into Crowley. I wasn't into anything. I don't even know how I fucking stumbled upon the Sync book. Honestly, I don't know how. But at some point I heard, I think, a 42 minutes with y'all, and maybe Kevin Halcott had something to do with it at the time, talking about the moon ritual and NASA origins, the occult origins of NASA. It was like a 42 minutes episode. And it fucked with my head so deeply that I was just like, oh, this is my new career. Like, I don't care about sports or politics. It's like, I'm not, this is where it's at, like this deep stuff. And I never really turned back. I mean, I've hung out with Alan and gone to meetups and stuff. It's not so much a beef, I think. And I was looking at your chart. You're a Leo. Yeah. I mean, I can geek out at your chart randomly. But
please do.
I think what happened is in Congress, in congruence with the fact that I was like literally waking up like a kid in a movie theater or whatever, being like, holy shit, what do you mean? You know, like Donnie Darko style. Like it was an intense kind of like moment of not apotheosis because you ain't there yet kind of thing, but you guys cracked my fragile eggshell mind with some of this stuff because it's just stuff I'd never heard of, like the Parsons occult origins of NASA and stuff like that, and it's there for anybody who knows about it, but it's just not. These were not tendrils of thought that I had ever followed or even heard about, so it fucked with my head, and I think I just got into such a stupor between the psychedelics, between waking up and just being ecstatic about it, not having really much, because at the time I was growing cannabis and just kind of off doing my own thing in Colorado. It's not like I had a bunch of friends I could talk to this about. So I think essentially what happened, and I still do tag people on Facebook quite a bit, but I got, like you were saying in the green room, I got into more of a mania of tagging people to get on the wave or something like that. I don't even know how to explain it. And I think from my perspective, that perturbed you a little. And then I was always just like, well, whatever, fuck it. And
well, don't take it personal.
It was annoying.
I'm going to be completely honest. I love sync heads. I love sync work, but a lot of sync heads, they annoy each other.
Right.
And like, there's something special about synchronicity that's very intimate and sort of like interpersonal. And so when it happens to you, you start identifying with it. But it's also like, I guess it'd be in comparison to some religious individuals. Like if you try to talk to a person open-mindedly about God, if they consider themselves religious, it's going to be it's going to be kind of like a laser beam conversation. And that's what it's like with sync to a large degree, because some people are pretty much convinced that what it means and what's going on is how they see it. Like they identify with it. And so they're not really concerned if you're on the same page. And there's like a weird competition to sync. But also, like, after you've dealt with synchronicities for a while, you no longer want to hear about them.
I hear you. Yeah. I mean, it's like going to a party.
This manic state. Like, in my opinion, there's a lot of like commonality between people who are sync heads, like really like symbol literate, overly producing. They're almost like they have like ADHD. It's some sort of symptom of that.
Right. I mean, one of the things about waking up, it seems, is, and I've always thought of it, is like you got to cross the river of kind of schizophrenia in a sense to kind of get to the other side. And I think you can get tangled in the water. It's complicated because certain personalities are going to identify with their narratives more and be like, I am the one or whatever. And it's like, well, we're all the monad and the Indra's net and it's all good. You know, it's tricky on how you even approach it. Especially given the fact that you've been in the community for so long, that not only is there probably more so before, but less so now, maybe just because of social media and stuff and YouTube, there was probably more clout, king of the hilling or something like that, like who's the greatest wizard of them all kind of vibes more. And that was probably directly correlative to output and like, you know, that kind of stuff. But yeah, like I said, you were one of you and the stuff at syncbook.com and everybody, I mean, that's how David Charles Plate's up in here and Andreas. Like, it's funny how these webs just keep weaving in a sense. But yeah, that was like the OG crew to me, and that's about a decade ago that I turned on to y'all. But it's never, I mean, it changed.
Yeah, and I ditched out for a while too. Like I kind of got fed up with everybody's BS, and then left and came back, and nobody was really producing. Like it is, in my opinion, about a decade ago, there was a really a striving and kind of unified alternative presence on the internet, where people were sharing information, and it was somebody hacked it basically, or multiple people hacked it. I don't really know, but there was kind of a divisive spirit that happened around like the 2016, and I'm not necessarily blaming it on Trump or anything like that, but
identity politics,
a political hijacking.
Yeah.
You're either for or against.
I mean, I don't even have to name names particularly, but it's like the people I met up at the Boise Sync meetup or whatever in I think 2015, I want to say. It was before all the shenanigans essentially of identity politics. I mean, people can identify however they want, but I think it started becoming more vitriolic. And I was always kind of under the impression, I mean, I don't know, this sounds crazy, maybe it's an intuition that's incorrect, but I was always like, this is magic with a K. People are working with this. Like, there's definitely people with wills and intentions, no pun intended, with
And pretty
with,
strong wills. Like, you have to understand that, like, we're probably dealing with people who have some sort of mutant ability, you know. And just like, we're using an analogy for like comic books, right? So each of these people have like some sort of insight that is like, it's productive, but it's also like above and beyond what anybody else has got, right?
Mhm.
Whether it be Jake Kotza figuring out that the Millennial Hotel right next to the World Trade Center happened to look and be modeled after the monolith from 2001, and drawing that line, nobody had ever thought about that, but that's easily seen, right?
for those with us to see, yeah.
Right. And so there's a little bit of communication where people can come up with ideas and other people can like sort of peer review those ideas. But so there's this weird competition of whose idea or philosophy of what generates the synchronicities that is basically the wedge. So it's like there's a philosophy issue. But like synchronicity, like you mentioned magic, it is magic with K. Like sync and tarot or divination and magic are all kind of interrelated. Like if you go and find certain books about magic, you're going to have a conversation about synchronicity, because that's basically what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to push your will onto the external world. What a synchronicity is, where like the internal and the external line up coincidentally. So of course they're connected, right? And trying to figure out that way of intentionally making the external world line up with your internal world is what magic is, right? So individuals who have like coincidentally come into contact with understanding magic usually have synchronicities that happen a lot in their life. But there's also different categories, like individuals who have had like alien abductions or have gotten very into UFOs and all of that. They seem to have a lot of synchronicities. And it's becoming a lot more popular. Like we now have, you know, Robert Kennedy, and he's talking about having a synchronicity. That's like one of his running points. But also you have like a pretty popular conspiratorial podcast that's on YouTube nowadays called The Y-Files, which was just featured on Joe Rogan. They just came out with their synchronicity breakdown or whatever. But it's so sprawling, right? Like the individuals who are involved have so many like singular insights. They're almost like little mutants that need the other sync heads to sort of like play these things off of, so everybody can have a voice. But at the same time, it's like a very my thing and only my thing, because this is happening in my internal world.
Correct.
You know, and I think that that's like the main, if there's anything I would like to try to like get across to other people, is like, I have spent a lot of time paying my dues. Like I've interviewed and considered the other points of views of a lot of different sync heads. And I don't necessarily, like even the most well-known sync heads, I don't necessarily agree with. But we all need each other. That's one thing that I'm absolutely positive on, is like, if you try to denounce Jake Kotza's work, then nobody's going to give your fucking work any goddamn credence whatsoever. And the old alternative oomph that we had like a decade ago is what I'd like to see, like, you know, Andreas's channels and all of his different shows and all of this energy that all of us are putting in to kind of back him. I want to generate that place again. Like, I want to have a place where we can talk about conspiracy theory without like putting the other person down or creating this fever of fear and anxiety where we have to act now, even though we don't have all the facts. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, you're making total sense. It's funny because you were talking about where the internal and the external meet. I mean, that's this is an age-old human problem. Some monkeys want to touch the monolith and some don't, right? Kind of thing. And but yet they're all in the terrarium of being called the Serengeti or whatever. So
some don't learn as fast. Like if you actually read the book, that's like a great
the book
part
is the
of,
shit.
like,
yeah.
Some of them start tying their shoelaces, you know, and like others start they can't pick up. They're not learning as quick. But to me, I think sync is a learning tool. You should not identify with your own sync. Like you shouldn't necessarily be like, I am the chosen one. Hell,
I'm the
that might
resonator.
help you. I guess some people might get helped by that idea. I don't know. I mean,
well, there's a season for it.
Temporarily.
Yeah. I mean, well, it's tricky. Like you were saying, you want kind of hope for a second wind of the zeitgeist that you were experiencing in the 2015s era. And the river's never quite the same for various reasons. I mean, I have my outside, because I was really on the outside looking in and trying to like basically rub shoulders with people that were in a clique, so to speak. And it was not as accessible as I would have hoped. But then I think that's because people were committed to their intellectual property or their syncs to the identity core level that it became like, don't touch my baby kind of thing, or don't talk, you know, like don't question my baby. So
there's a lot of finger pointing and accusations of stealing work. I mean, because like, how do you do this? Like I've always been fascinated on, okay, we have all of this work. How do we present it? You know, and then we've done this different ways. We've only shown video, or we've only shown pictures, or we've only done text. And I mean, most of my investigation has involved pop culture, because that's something that we share. You get what I mean? But it's not necessarily promoting it as being a positive force or whatnot. And I think that's like the main draw. Everybody can acknowledge the fact that there's symbols in pop culture, but what is doing it? Is it us doing it, or is there some Illuminati force that is way more capable and way more knowledgeable than us, and we're only picking up like the little bread crumbs left behind?
Or many things at once. I mean, on the one hand, it's
gotta be.
Yeah, like on the one hand, and I do want to hear your story, so we're jumping into the deep end already. But it's not just one thing. I mean, somebody was referencing Any Color You Like, Dark Side of the Moon. It's like, just like Dark Side of the Moon. Light is consciousness or something, and it refracts through experience, which is the triangle prism, and then everybody's going to get a different wavelength at various times of their lives. So sometimes you're the Fool card, sometimes you're the fucking Hangman. I mean, the archetypes are, and this is kind of an existential point where it's like, you know, is Leo an energy outside of human experience? Is it a tool that's fashioning us in a McLuhan sense, where it's like, you know, it's a feedback loop almost? How much control do people have over that? Obviously.
Actually, I want to bring up one thing briefly, because we just talked about this on a Europa Extra I had with Brian Lahr, and he brought this up to me. He's doing like astral projection stuff, physical effects, and so on. He's also quite aware. And something we both had noticed recently, I wonder if you noticed that too, Will, is that on YouTube, you don't, you know, you're not typing anything, you're not doing anything. It's a topic or a video or an idea you haven't thought about in months. Then you think of it, and suddenly, for me, maybe the next day, some people say it's within minutes, even immediately, the YouTube recommendation page shifts, because it's usually quite static, actually. If you just refresh the page, there's not so much happening. But it shifts, and it shows you a video that you haven't seen for 6 months. You have no reason to watch again or whatever, but you thought of it, and it's popping up on the screen. And things similar to that. And that's another layer. We spoke about quantum radar, and God knows how this could be harvested and used by, I don't know, YouTube to give you recommendations. I don't know, but it's getting really tricky.
You guys were talking a lot about simulation theory, right? Today?
Yeah. I don't know about.
Well, not necessarily simulation theory, just the question, how can this happen? Because it's not, no one has spoken anything about it, like for, let's say, Britney Spears, whatever, yeah? And I'm not even uttering her name, I'm not searching anything, I'm not doing anything that a usual computer system could pick it up, but still suddenly YouTube recommendation shows you a Britney Spears video. How the F did the computer or YouTube get the idea from, if it's not somehow, I don't know, scraping the etheric field, or what's going on?
But that's like a material presupposition where there's like a logical conclusion. I mean, let's just go full bore, and it's like, we're spirit having a material experience. Why would we be surprised? I guess it's phenomenologically good and necessary for the fool's journey to be surprised, or else we'd be bored. But basically, like, why would Matt, you know, it gets tricky because what we're talking about is like, is this a program that has evolved and is a technological paradigm that's scraping your neurons or whatever, that theory might be, or if it's not either or. I mean, if we're in a dream and the dream starts responding to your dream participation in a certain way, and when we say dream, people think very abstractly about that, but it's like, it's probably more realistic than we think. Just
I
go ahead.
definitely caught your show earlier today, or at least part of it. But the reason I bring up simulation theory is because one of the main, well, we were talking about Philip K. Dick before the show started, I think. But one of the things that people don't realize is if you go and you read the reading list in the back of Sync Book, which has like 26 different authors, if you go back in the back, almost over 80% of them say Philip K. Dick should be on your reading list. And Philip K. Dick is not only one of the main proponents of synchromysticism, but he's also one of the main proponents of simulation theory. And there's been a lot of individuals who are into synchronicity who kind of see it as like, the idea of the matrix, where there's a glitch in the matrix or something of that nature. And even the idea of synchronicity or deja vu is mentioned as like an idea about the matrix glitching or whatnot.
Right. It's like when an upgrade occurs or something to that effect.
Right. It's like either this has happened over and over and over and over and over and over again, and see all of these echoes kind of play for synchronicity. I mean, that's like one of the concepts that Stephen King writes about in 11/22/63, where he's engaging the idea of synchronicities being some way that the universe fights back about being changed. Real wild idea that's not really, like, if you watch the series, it's not really talked about as much as it is in the book. But there's this concept that either it's memory from the universe being replayed over and over, or it's just proof that there's some sort of wires up underneath the board, and that's the proof of the simulation, so to speak. Like the fact that certain data is rehashed to save space, which so everybody's played. You're probably a gamer, right? Like everybody's been wrapped into these games where you step into a glitch and you realize it because you're like, oh, I've seen the horse floating in midair before, right? But because the computer is not, it's not giving you a full render of the universe when you're not looking, right? So it's just only giving you the universe when you look at it. And so sometimes when you look at the universe, you're paying attention, you're getting these little echoes that the simulation is like throwing back to you. But in truth, both are kind of dangerous ideas. Like you might be wrong. And if you kind of like if you try to do synchromystic research and you watch a movie with a certain idea in mind, A, you're watching it thinking that the Illuminati is programming you, or B, you're thinking that the gods this is a fucking burning bush and the gods are talking to you. That's probably what you're going to see. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't necessarily mean the other idea is wrong, though. There's a whole other side of this. There's a book written that was called Demystifying Synchronicity by Williams Gibbs, I think. You can check me on that. But he basically said it was like, the same thing as a dream, how the individual, you're giving yourself the answer that you were looking for. So you're thinking about Britney Spears and boom, Britney Spears is there. But you were already thinking about her. So anything that's like owning a Jeep Cherokee and all of a sudden everybody else has got a Jeep Cherokee, that's not necessarily true. That's where your head was at. So you notice it more.
I hear you. Yeah, it's like resonance repetition. And it's tricky because people tend to think, oh, well, I don't think of Britney Spears consciously, but our unconscious and subconscious are so broad in scope and power that it doesn't take much to
cut it backwards.
It doesn't take much to that looks cool. It doesn't take much to influence. And then it gets chicken eggy where it's like, what's not sync? like the whole Tao is syncing in some toroidal sense, like, you know, in a grand unified sense. It seems like nothing's out of sync. It just might be not on a frequency or a wave that one apprehends, but one has to apprehend it at some level to even apprehend it at all. So, and I do think it's normal for people to get caught up in the story. I mean, like when someone's like, I've seen the light, I've got the burning bush, like that's good. Like it's a punctuation event, you know. Buddha had to wake up. Buddha means awake, right? But then it's like, how strongly are you attached to it? Are you holding onto it loosely? Are you clutching it with all you've got? Because, you know, like you're saying, like if all you see, I mean, Jesus Christ, the number 42, you know, certain things never even popped into my sphere of influence until I started turning on to people like y'all. And that's where it's not like something to be wary of, but it's something to be aware of, where it's like the conditions you find yourself in influence you at levels you might not presuppose or be even aware of, to high levels. So if you're, I mean, this is why people say vibe attract tribes and all that stuff, because I think, I mean, it gets complicated. Hold on. I want to hear a little bit.
Okay, so personally, my brand of investigation basically is like trying to figure out that, right? So I had to problem solve on how I could even investigate that. And I'm not necessarily coming to people with my brand of this is what you should think. I'm coming to people as like, hey, y'all, look, this is what I found. And so
Correct.
that's not necessarily as popular as
this is what it
saying
is.
I have the answers.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is I have no fucking clue what's going on here.
That's the beginning of wisdom, bro. Like, but I'm looking at your chart. You have a North Node, Venus, and Mars in Virgo, but in 12th house. I mean, you are here to finesse the curly cues out of the script of the Matrix. I mean, you really are here to like make practical the dream. So never doubt that. Whether
I think people get disappointed when they realize how practical I am.
Well, you do have a lot of Virgo.
Some of the stuff that I've put out there has been far out there, and people who have understood it have been far out there individuals. But when they like come, like approach me, I'm like, this with it's like we're on a mission here. We're not trying to digress from the mission.
What would you say the mission is? Like, just awareness, like self-aware awareness?
Okay, so let's go back. So you wanted to know a little bit of my story, and you mentioned Tao.
I mean, we don't. Yeah,
I
the
think
Tao, like Taoism.
Okay, so there was an experience when I was like 18 or 19. I read a whole bunch of books in a row, and they all had to do with synchronicity, but they were just like random books, like the Celestine Prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
One of its first things that it says is that the world will become obsessed with synchronicity. I did read some Jung at that time, but I was like walking through, and like the Tao Te Ching like fell off of a shelf in front of me. And I opened it up and realized that exactly what I was thinking about is what was said. My first realization with like divination was with the Tao Te Ching. Mm-hmm. And you can see I have
the hexagram.
One of the hexagrams. I mean, that's this is the wrong way to look at it. You're supposed to look at it like this. But that's one of the hexagrams from the I Ching. I learned a lot about the I Ching. From the I Ching, I learned a lot about like how to interpret divination. A lot of people don't understand that divination has a lot to do with intuition. But like learning a lot about symbols. I had a flow state when I was in my 20s. You ever been in that situation where like you're at a rave and you can't stop dancing or something like that? People were teaching me how to, what was called liquid dance or break dance, pop and lock and shit like that. And I wasn't getting it. It was like 2 weeks of this shit. And my friends who were like from New York were like pounding it into my head. I had like the perfect mixture of alcohol and weed that night. And I just started dancing and couldn't stop. And I found this place where I could outdo myself. As soon as I thought about the shit would happen. And it was very productive, but it was like this almost complacent area where I really wasn't trying. I was like really relaxed and laid back. And when I was in that spot, I swear to God, there was like this weird plasticity that was happening. and I was getting insights that I didn't understand where they were coming from at the time. And I started realizing that dancing was like a language and that you could talk to people without talking to people. My mom was a speech pathologist and had taught me all about body language. So that was on my mind. And somebody at the time was talking about bees and how they don't really talk. They just do this dance to show all the other bees where the pollen is. And all of that stuff made sense to me. And I had this really like existential night, and I rolled over and we had this stack of like Smithsonian magazines. We had them for years. One of them was laid open because we had a party that night, and there was this painting by Jean-Claude Gérôme from like the 1900s. And it was called like, what was it called? The Snake Charmer or some shit like that. And my brain automatically analyzed everything about it. It was like overly symbolic, but at the same time, I realized there's no way that I can convince anybody that what was there. Yeah, that's it right there, the Snake Charmer. And I'm not necessarily sure if I'm capable of even expressing it now, but I had this whole thing that was like instantaneous in my mind, and I was like, okay, there's some like, I just became super symbol literate, right? And realized that there was all these intricacies to how people, because I was raised an artist, and so like expressing yourself through symbols and stuff of that nature became immediately like I understood it. Me and my brother, we started doing it to movies. We went and watched The Matrix, and we were like, well, holy crap, how many times is Keanu Reeves played the Messiah? Like, we would just have these, but basically what was like synchromysticism, right? Where we're drawing all of these connections that we're obviously picking up symbolically from these movies, but we weren't really like, we had no concept that they could be intentional. And at the same time, we had no concept, like, people have taken these things and attached them to like 9/11 and all of this other stuff, and like wring these Matrix movies out of more than what we had gotten from them. And to me, that's like the validation of sync. I've been involved with different sync investigations where you'll have different people with different backgrounds see the exact same thing. And that's when you're like, oh, wait, no, there's something really going on here. But I didn't realize that until I saw a Stephen Wilner video. It was right when my daughter was born, my second daughter was born. Instead of my wife taking the time off, I took the time off. And so I was taking care of her during the day, but I was doing a lot of artwork, and I was letting YouTube for the first time in my life play in the background, right? And I was watching all of these UFO videos. You know, I had a couple of UFO experiences. I've always been into mysteries. Like, I love solving problems. I lock myself in escape rooms for fun, just so I cut back on confirmation bias. But I was listening to UFOs on repeat, like Coast to Coast and all of the Project Camelot. And this thing about the Montauk.
Oh yeah, you were on a Montauk trip for a minute. I remember that.
Yeah, I'm still on that. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, these certain symbols will continue to penetrate your life
and resonate.
And most of my sync research, I don't think that I have like the key to sync, but I have certain topics that I'm almost an expert on because they come up continuously. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't want to just denude it to your chart because it's not that simple, but like, look, astrology charts are basically like your RPG characters. It's like, are you a wizard? Are you a fucking brawler? Like, what are you? Like, what are your proclivities? A wizard can throw a stick, or, you know, can throw a punch, and then I guess an archer can learn a spell or something, but people have more proclivities than not. And this is obviously a presupposition I lean into heavily. It's not like the end all be all, but given the fact that you have all that 12th house, Venus, Mars, and North Node in Virgo, and rising, I mean, you're here to basically hear the wind and tell us and translate it. But because it's 12th house, it's like the collective, you're almost like a little Rosetta Stone. And everybody is, so I don't want to like, it's one of these tricky things. Everybody is this. This is what being a conscious aware being is. There's a bell curve probably in terms of like capacity or something like that, which kind of is alluded to in 2001: A Space Odyssey. Not every monkey touches the monolith, therefore not every monkey has children that go to the moon, and it is what it is. But they're all God's creation, yay, or whatever, right?
Good way of
So
putting that as well.
so yeah, it's not not all animals are equal in an Orwellian sense, but the access is almost pre-arranged to your character, so it's not surprising that you're very detail oriented and very mystical things. So I mean, when I'm just looking at your chart vaguely, so, and you were talking a little about earlier about kind of getting in that flow state. My girlfriend is a former break dancer from she did it in Atlanta, so she's tried to show me dance moves and I can't get in on that wave, but I understand like what you're talking about a little is Wu Wei, right, with the Taoist thing, where it's just like you get into this flow state where it's like, I know kung fu, and you're not really having to effort it too hard.
It's 120% the I know kung fu shit. And I started relating it to martial arts, and I was dancing and went to somebody and was like, they knocked the shit out of me quick. But I was like, because they understood it, they like leaned over and whispered in my ear and it's like, you just figured out what it took me 2 years to figure out about like martial arts, and that is don't think. And that's it. Like if you read the flow state book, which it took me 20 years to even realize what that was. You know, I hear all of these people talking about flow states on like Joe Rogan and stuff, and not all of the information you need is presented in those locations. Like you have to go to the book. And the book taught me there was all this neuroplasticity involved and how to reproduce it and how it was generated from studies about happiness. And so it's basically just learning. That's basically all it was. Like,
but there's a catch-22 with that, because if it's too difficult, you'll teeter off and be like angered by it and like not learn kung fu.
Of learning.
Yeah, and if it's too easy, you're like, fuck this, I don't care. So it's like it's got to hit that sweet spot of like it's got to challenge you, but it's not going to overflow you. Really good, interesting book. If this is, I think this is the one I've read.
Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is how you pronounce that man's name. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, who is a Hungarian scientist who had learned that individuals post-World War II in Europe there was a depression, but some of the people were still happy. Like they had learned how to be happy despite the overwhelming vibe of the whole Europe at the time.
Yeah. And
studying those like patterns of happiness is how we figured out flow state. Basically by asking people how they outdid themselves.
Right. So it's kind of a perfect spot, like a sweet spot. Like I was saying earlier, if it's too easy, you're not challenged enough, you're not going to engage with it fully enough to really like master it. And if it's too challenging, you're never going to care enough to keep going at it because you'll feel defeated. So you have to hit this thing where it's like it's novelty. Basically, you're hitting novelty patches that are upgrading your awareness, so you expand into the next sphere of novelty, like in a gradual enough way that your expansion is agreeable to your psyche or whatever, however you want to put that. Because if you get all the fucking burning bush downloads at once, it'll be like Indiana Jones. Your face will melt. It's like, oh my god, I can't handle this.
Well, I mean, nowadays what I do is I present myself as a researcher on religious and ecstatic experiences, because like flow states and all of that shit are considered to be ecstatic states, and so is synchronicity. And so I can walk up into a group of individuals who have nothing to do with synchromysticism, and they will kind of not raise their eyebrow to me as much if I come at it from that direction.
You're wearing the cultural camo.
I can guarantee you, like, I do a lot of research recently with David Koresh, and once I found like there was a certain amount of the files were missing, but when I found that missing 20 pages, what he mentioned was that he would run 6 miles every day, and the last like 20 minutes he would really push himself. And he said, I didn't have to do drugs because that gave me everything I needed. And I'm like, motherfucker, that was a flow state. Like, that's what that is. Like, runner's high is one of the most common flow states. And I'm like, the dude was just using neuroplasticity. But if you know that, you can see it in all kinds of places. The thing that I would guard people against is to actually go to the damn book, because most of the stuff on Rogan and everything is just kind of hashed together.
Yeah,
Like
it's
they
chewed up food for
like
baby
it's
birds.
the corn that people are searching for, that you have to do an extreme sport for, and that's not true. The most common, the individuals who report flow states the most are readers.
Mm-hmm. I could see that. Yeah, you're engaging with something that's challenging your mind and expanding it in a way that you can't predict, but it's not so challenging that you're like, I can't read Japanese, I can't read this. And just to the point, because it is what it is. I mean, it's really weird because it sounds very Unitarian or something, but like, how would I put it? It's like every animal has a different proclivity. So it's like if you look around at nature, it's like parrots are not peacocks, are not sharks, are not armadillos. And I think this sounds so weird. I mean, it's like there's a song like Nietzsche was said to say like the people that couldn't hear the music were thought insane, but I'm gonna botch the quote, but basically people are jamming to music and the people that can't hear it are like, you're fucking crazy. Everybody's going to be able to tune into some kind of music, and I think there's different kind of crumbs for various audience capacities. So it's not terribly. I'm not going to get into these, like a CIA operative and all this kind of stuff. I don't even really listen to Joe Rogan that much because clearly with that much power and clout and stuff, it's like there's definitely more to the picture than meets the eye probably. But at the end of the day, he's
there's a lot of money involved too. I mean, that's all you have to know. It's like once there's $120 million involved, like
there's hands behind that pushing an agenda.
Right. Well, there's at the very least, there's other people who's interested in that money. And so their influence should be considered. But the thing that bugs me is like, we are so far down the timeline, dude. All of the stuff that we figured out on how to like decode all of this stuff from 2008 has been absorbed and used against us at this point. And so you can't really trust shit anymore.
Well, that's definitely a presupposition. Okay, well, what I was getting at with that statement, and I don't have to go off on it long, is like it takes, like in the Bible, which I'm not pushing Christianity necessarily, but Paul's like, when you're a kid, you have baby breast milk, you don't get the fucking steak, you can't chew it. And I think there's definitely epochs, whether it's Dolores Cannon saying there's first wave waker uppers and second wave waker uppers or whatever, with starseed kind of like new age qualities to this idea, or if you just look at the iterations of whatever expansion in a tree with the rings or whatever, growth is not the same uniformly, and it takes all kinds. And that's I mean, Tiny Tim is going to wake up and know he's God one day just as much as Ebenezer Scrooge with his trip or whatever. It's like this weird thing. So it's like they're not going to approach the Tao the same way in anyway, but relatively similarly, but not exactly the same. I guess that's what I was getting at with the Joe Rogan stuff and anything where it's like, to us, I mean, it's like somebody who's jaded, because I'm far less jaded than you, I would imagine. Somebody who's heard the Beatles a shit ton of times is going to be like, yeah, they're cool. But it's like somebody who's never really heard the Beatles and eats acid and listens to it is going to be like, oh my God, this blows my mind. And it's just going to hit them differently. So and it gets tricky because I do think there's probably agendas ultimately that don't matter, but they seem to be playing out like a chess game where it's like, there's effects, I guess you could say. So it doesn't mean money equals bad, but obviously like Stanley Kubrick had a bunch of money and he had a bunch of funding. And I mean, he made great art because of it.
Where did that come from? I mean, but like, I'm not necessarily like a fan of Kubrick either. Like, he's kind of a sync god, but I don't show any loyalty to him. Like, that guy could be full of shit too.
Well, he seemed like a jerk.
I mean, the bad guy. Like, I don't know if Carl Jung's the bad guy.
Sure.
Like
I mean, that's where you have to start trusting your own gut and your own intuition, because at some point, I mean, everything is a boogeyman if you let it be. But this becomes into like a ontological situation where it's like, do you believe, like Einstein, who is a Pisces and whatever, maybe a trans psyop and all this kind of stuff everybody talks about now. But Einstein essentially said something to the effect of like, a fundamental issue in your grokking reality to a degree is going to be, do you look at it as for you or against you? Are you pronoiac or paranoiac? And it doesn't mean, like, I'm sure, look, whether it's the sun dying and life on earth having to change, like there's situations that are not ideal to the mind that doesn't know how to grasp a greater system. I guess like death and change can be daunting, and we could be like, I don't prefer that, but it's like, it is what it is. Like, revolutions happen and times change, but and this is what religious fundamental impulses, I think, are, where they're like, there's a consciousness that I can relate to in some way that has a meta-narrative plan, like a teleological plan. And whether you're going to like a Carl Sagan kind of contact level of Teleos, where it's like, we're going to expand into a galactic tribe and, we're waking up 2001 style. Or if you're getting into like a Judeo-Christian thing where it's like, we're going to more the Philip K. Dick thing, where it's like we're gonna all turn on to the awareness of what we are in the dream, whether it's black magic, Jewish mysticism, controlling a matrix or not is a different point. But I'm rambling. I tend to do this. I tend to
No,
switch anyway.
no. You're making some good. Hold on. But you're kind of piquing my interest here a second. But I'm going to need another. I'll be right
do it.
back.
Crack it. I mean, Rafa, we've talked about this a lot, and I know having listened to Bashar, you get what I'm kind of getting at, which is like how we choose to frame something necessarily determines our interaction with what we're framing. And it's animalistically natural to be afraid of what we don't know, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. So it's like a baby in utero is probably like, holy shit, it's changing. Oh my God, I'm going to be born. The water's breaking. What is light? What is air? Oh my God. It's freaking out at some level, maybe. But at the same time, it's not like the process is not only good, it's necessary for the perpetuation of our species or whatever to be born. Right. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not at a place where I'm scared of narratives, like especially with the world stuff going on, right? It's like, oh my gosh, is there a cabal running things? Even Terrence McKenna was like, "There's the scary secret is nobody's in control." I think everyone's like hitting at the pinata from their own perspective, trying to control things. But the biggest joke, kind of Neon Evangelion style or whatever, is gonna be like, "Haha, we were all playing a game and we forgot," or whatever. But
Well, I mean, there's certain, okay, so like I said, there's problem solving. If this is what you're going to use as your form of study, there's got to be some sort of like controls or checks and balances that you're going to have to use for your investigation just to double check yourself for like confirmation bias.
sure.
And that's how,
Well, that's studious. That's a good way to do it. I mean, I approve of.
You
and
have to be
appreciate that
logical
approach.
about this, because otherwise, like one of the things that I've done is I've gone to chatbots and taught them how to do synchromysticism. And it's really not that hard, but you have to get around their biases by taking out all New Age thought and all conspiracy theory, just because I'm not necessarily saying that those things are not true, but those are what synchromysticism is tagged to according to the chatbots. That's the information that they're scraping.
Okay.
So once you take that, but that's also very practical in doing an investigation where you're not sounding like you're ranting, right?
Well, we're
So
all
one of the
ranting.
things that I did personally is I went to the actors, but that's a bad problem because like at a certain point in synchromysticism, people were only paying attention to the girls. Now there was different forms of synchromysticism. Like there was one synchromystic that ended up being very true because he thought that there was this whole symbolism involving a pedophile island and involving what he called the gay mafia, which he attached P. Diddy to. But that ended up being true. But at the time when he was saying that, nobody fucking believed his ass.
Right.
Do you
Hindsight.
get what I'm saying? But he's
Yeah.
not necessarily wrong. And there's been some people who have tried to use synchromysticism with some sort of like moral lens, sort of like trying to predict the things that they would want to happen. And that shit didn't happen. You get what I'm saying? Not
Yeah.
to say that their whole stance or the syncs that they were seeing were not true, because I personally was, reviewing their work and I was like, no, I can understand why they would see that. But to actually make a prediction is number one, hard and ballsy as hell. Because if you're wrong, you get meta egg on your face, so to speak.
1,000. I mean, it's like a drug trip or Alice in Wonderland. Where
Just
it's
let
like,
me say one thing, and
Oh,
that's
yeah.
the whole
Jump in,
issue
jump
maybe
in.
with people scoping up. I'm not so familiar with all of it, but I've heard some of, the synchromystic work overall, is that you mentioning, you would discard your credibility by making a wrong prediction. The only issue is if you're popular enough and on whatever Joe Rogan and mainstream podcasts enough, it almost seems you can be wrong every time, whether about geopolitics or anything else. And then 2 months later, just come back, scrape the other information, and you're kind of like eternal phoenix and suffer no consequences. That's kind of an issue that I see, that the people actually doing the work receive little to no credit. And there is people popularizing some things which they didn't even originate themselves at all, or don't even give credit. And they can be wrong all the time, but still somehow keep afloat due to algorithms or whatever else.
But that's the thing. Nobody's really and I think the reason that nobody's figured out how to like monetize sync is because everybody kind of intuitively knows that that's like the bad guy thing to do.
It's not even
But
doable. Maybe.
I think it is. I mean, as far as predictions go, I don't know if it's doable. I've been paid for sync because of the work that I did on Meta Egg. I was contacted by a rebranding agency that was using mythology as sort of like, and Jung, a lot of Jung, to sort of like to use in their designs. He says back in like 2008, there was a lot of individuals who were looking at the hidden symbols in modern corporations. So
Right. It was like a renaissance of
Taco
symbolism.
Bell eye,
Yeah,
you know, the Taco Bell. Now, with Taco Bell, totally took that and used it as marketing.
Right.
Well, now there's a whole group of individuals who are like, oh wait, we can use mythology for marketing in the same way that George Lucas used mythology for cinema. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And they came to, they're looking at synchromystics because they're like, what do you guys do all the time? All you people do is read mythology, which is true. We're either looking at modern pop culture as mythology, or we're trying to fucking date it back to some mythology that the person doesn't even fucking know about who wrote it to begin with. You get what I'm saying? But we're doing that for corporations now, where individuals are paying us to analyze this shit because they know that it's valuable. Now, that kind of disintegrates the idea that it was a conspiracy to begin with, or it could mean that there's somebody so far ahead of us and so far advanced that like it's hopeless anyways.
Well,
I
hope,
mean,
hope is maybe not the right word, but okay. So in terms of your analogy, where it's like corporate America is picking up on magic in a new way, there's a renaissance because the people, like the thought,
what is marketing is magic, right? You have
always
to,
has been, always has been. I mean,
always has been.
yeah. So this, I mean, this
Totally.
is in a sense, this isn't new. Like if I mean, look at Moses or a silly story like that. It's like I had a religious experience, and it told me to do something, and now you guys have to get on board. Or even the Abrahamic thing where it's just like, you guys are going to get circumcised now, you adult men. It's like, how do you get people aboard on a culture like that? Like without proof, you know, it's like, hey, Abraham said so. It's like, so I mean, in a sense, it's almost chicken egg stuff. It's like, I mean, this is where it gets into like Mobius strip kind of level David Lynchian stuff. And I also have to shout out to you guys for that. I mean, the whole Sync Book group turned me on to things like David Lynch and Twin Peaks and shit like that. I mean, just all the stuff that you guys geeked out on forever. And in a weird way, it's like, it's almost like solar maximums and stuff where there's like cycles within cycles. So to you, it felt like a novelty wave that you were writing. You're like, I want to get that back. But it's like, that was yesterday's, and this isn't to sound like I got to say this right. What the zeitgeist that you guys were a part of can't be repeated because the elements are necessarily different. The musical chairs have changed or whatever, right? So it's like, it is a different alchemical vision of
it's
reality.
like Ready
right
Player One, right? Like it really, it has to do with this generation that stepped between analog to digital. Because nobody could go through movies the way that you can go through. Like right now,
nobody has the attention span.
You could go through and find every Brian De Palma movie and watch them all like as they came out. You could do that for Woody, right? You could do that for Woody Allen. Go through which is an asinine amount of movies. So it was never possible before now. Like it was never before. Like you can't have synchromysticism before the internet.
I don't know about that. It would hit differently.
Yeah. Like the guy who we were talking about earlier, Lauren Coleman, basically in the 70s had pieced together all of these things that are written. Most of this stuff is covered in stuff like the Mothman prophecies and shit like that. And the whole writing about the Bridgewater Triangle by Lauren Coleman, where there's these ideas that there are soft spots in the terrain, sort of like ley line areas in which a lot of weird things are reported. And those
like
things include like Bigfoot, UFOs, pterodactyl sightings, weird murders, shit like that. these places were known once they like categorized all of these different places all over the US. They realized that most of them had the name devil in one language or another in their names, which is true. Like you can see, like a year or so ago, I drove through Arkansas with my mom, and we drove through Devil's Den, Arkansas. And I was like, I know this place got aliens. There's no way this place ain't got aliens. And they have like their own cryptids and all of that stuff. But that's synchromystic work, right? Because the place should not have anything to do with the name. That's like,
well, that's a
early
presupposition.
synchromystic work.
I don't
But
know.
you can't go through movies until you got torrents. You know what I'm saying?
Well, the aperture of awareness, it's like being, okay, so I'm not disagreeing with you outright, but this would be like to say that language magic wasn't possible until like the Gutenberg printing press or something. It's like the aperture of the amount of media is changed clearly, and it's changing us in a Marshall McLuhan sense. We read reality differently now than our, pre-literate ancestors or whatever. So fundamentally, we are apprehending the Tao differently than an equal biologically evolved human, whatever, 10,000 years ago. They look the same hardware, but the software was running on very different stuff. And that, because of a technological singularity or maybe a transcendental object at the end of time, like McKenna style or whatever, things are ramping up in such a way that the amount of change and compression of media and symbol, which is ultimately, media is symbol writ flesh, basically. That's what it is. It's like, here's an idea, here's a story, there's a good guy, blah, blah. It's like, these are archetypes. You get it. I don't have to preach to you. And the speed of that is changing so quickly that, like you were saying, because you're not that much older than me. You're only a few years older, but you were saying that you were less tech literate than me. And I would say that I was doing a lot of psychedelics, and I'm a Sun and Moon Gemini with a Jupiter and Aquarius. So I think I can plug in real quick to certain tech or whatever. But what I'm getting at is like the rate of digestion and consumption of media that you're able to do that even Philip K. Dick couldn't do.
Right.
Just being a Gen Xer or whatever, right? And then that's, it's weird now because
religious text, like you can, all chatbots are trained on religious text, and
I wonder why.
Because that's the same reason. Like the Gutenberg press, the first
Made
thing
Bibles?
that was printed was the Bible. You know what I'm saying?
So that goes hand in hand because because it's like chicken egg stuff, and it's in a sense it's like how would I put it? When you need in the Matrix, they're like, we need guns, lots of guns, and they get them all of a sudden in the loading screen. It's like conscious reality might be responding to our needs, known or otherwise. So when we say we need to make a punctuation event like certain things within the culture or the zeitgeist or the psyche of the species as a whole or whatever, the novelty pops up and creeps through the cracks in such a way that we huff the fumes from the Oracle of Delphi that we needed that exact moment, and it changes the trip. Astrology is a great example. We didn't know about Uranus for a long time. There was just these outer planet, the outer planets. We didn't know about them. We didn't have the technology to see that far.
The common consensus didn't know about them.
Sure, maybe some psychonaut shaman or something like that. But generally speaking, like they weren't known.
Well, okay, so.
But when we discovered Uranus, which is it's going into Gemini right now, which the last time that happened was World War II and the Civil War before that. Anyway, when we discovered Uranus, it was through technology, and Uranus is basically the higher octave of Mercury, right? So it's just like, all right, we're talking about technology and revolutions, and we found it during the scientific revolution. I'm not even going to get into like Tartary and resets and is this the best tech, but like there was this as above, so belowing kind of going on, it seems. So when it's like if Alice becomes aware of a new level of the dream and she's like, oh my gosh, a caterpillar and a mushroom, it's like she starts having a very different trip, and then it goes somewhere else because of the causal linkage of her awareness to the event itself, which that's what being is. Like we're here dreaming the trip, but everybody's trip is different. I don't even know what I'm getting at with the point here. There's not really much.
Okay.
Yeah, cut me off anytime.
One of the things that I have been directed towards is Ludwig Boltzmann. Raphael, if you could look him up real quick for me. But
we got a hacker on the Matrix here at Raphael. Like, quick, get us a telephone booth.
This guy is important to understanding these concepts because he's basically where we get the idea for entropy. So there's a concept on the second law of thermodynamics that everything is going from order to chaos. Mm-hmm. And the chaos is usually attributed to the word entropy. You understand this?
Yeah, the entropic slowing down, cooling down of the universe, all that.
And
The
humans, by the
Boltzmann-
way, human systems being a negentropic system, or probably even reasoning being negentropic, so order generating. But please go on.
Sure, but the whole idea of evolution technically goes against the second law of thermodynamics, because evolution works from chaos or randomness to more an ordered system. But it's what is called like a closed system. But it doesn't matter, because Ludwig Boltzmann, one of the guys who was like, he's the statistician. Like, he's the guy who we understand statistics about. But
Looks
he's
like he's an
also the guy that
Aquarius.
we get the idea that if you put 1,000 monkeys on an island with a typewriter in 1,000 years, they're going to write like Finnegan's Wake or some shit like that. That's why nobody liked Boltzmann, because he came up with this idea of the Boltzmann brain, which says that if the brain exists in its thoroughly ordered system that it is now, that it could pop into existence instantaneously by itself with no predetermination. And that doesn't make any sense to most people. But it's like, if you look at Boltzmann, like, there, basically what he's saying is if there's a system that can be ordered, then it can pop into order instantaneously. It's also a better way to understand it is that if any technology is developed, that is 100% probability that it had already been developed.
Same as it ever was, as they say.
Same as it ever was.
Right. Well, that gets into whole things like yugas, like the Hindu philosophy is like this is an eternal recurrence that basically is going through qualities like golden ages and Kali yugas and all this stuff. So it's like the temperature of the oven changes, and therefore the kind of cookie changes that's baked in the oven at the time, but it's always churning out cookies at some level. And even in a Terrence McKenna kind of sense, he had said something because I mean, unless I have really big downloads, otherwise it seems evolution isn't entirely implausible to me. I know that's not popular exactly with a lot of people. I'm not like a strict Darwinianist where it's like it has to be a certain way, but it seems like when you just look at the nature of it, it's like it took a long fucking time according to our models now, and they might be absolutely wrong and totally nefarious, but with cosmology as it stands at the moment, it's like it took a long time for like elements to cool from a plasma state into elements that we know that can constitute stars that can for a long time, like 1 billion years, 2 billion years or something, it was like an oven of potential, and then things started hardening and ossifying, and I mean, this is the whole singularity curve. It's like it's getting faster and faster, and it took a long time for humans to come around, and it took a long time or less time for the wheel, and the less time, you know what I mean? Like now we're at AI and all this shit. That's the whole technological singularity thing.
I think once you get like, okay, so if we had an AI that was adapted to what modern man is as of 2025, and you sent it out into space, and it came across a planet, and that planet was less evolved than us, I think you could observe the planet for a short amount of time, and the AI could go, they're 40 years from flight.
Well, it could make correspondences and correlations, sure. I mean,
No,
I think even Bashar talked about that.
So the eye, okay, the camera eye that you and I enjoy, that is so supposedly, this is evolution's finest, right?
Oh, the eyeball itself.
If we're at the top of the food chain, the odds are that we have the best eye. However, the camera eye, not the compound eye, but the camera eye that we enjoy, has developed in evolution 7 times independently, at least. And what certain, I mean, they may be Christian evolutionists, but what they suggest is a couple of different things that tells us. One, if an alien comes down, it's like a 97% chance that they got an eye that looks exactly like ours. I mean, the other thing it tells us is that it might not be randomness that motivates evolution.
Right.
It's not necessarily randomness, but the answer to a riddle. This is why I love escape rooms, Because when you get put into an escape room and you are handed the question, there's no argument on whether or not the question's there, or if you're interpreting it subjectively or objectively, because that's all determined on whether or not you fucking get out. Well, most of us see these things that happened into our lives, like maybe synchronicities are like parts of a riddle that you find in an escape room. But because you don't think they have a source outside of yourself, you don't give them credence as meaning. But when you're in the escape room, you know what the meaning is. And it no longer becomes this task of you being the only motherfucker who can get out of that escape room. Because let me tell you, there's not an escape room I've ever seen where if you give me an hour, I'm getting out by myself. Not going to fucking happen. And if you go in there and you try to control the situation and be the one who has all the right answers, you're not going to get out either. It becomes more of a task of recognizing the right answer when you hear it. And that seems to be how evolution plays out. Evolution is not randomness, but going, oh, that answer works. And that's why it evolved 7 times independently. It's because it's not random, but that means a whole bunch of shit. That means we ain't alone. That means we ain't never been alone. And that means that we're probably in a simulation that somebody else built. And the weirder thing is when you take these sync ideas and look at them across like religious text, they're all saying the same damn thing. Mm-hmm. And they're all saying that. They're basically saying, like, it doesn't matter if you're listening to the Quran or if you're listening to the canon Bible, one thing it's clear. We, and it says it in the Quran as we, and it says it in the Bible as we, made everything you know. We control the laws of nature, and we can fuck you up. And that's what all of them say. And it also says, hey, don't fuck people you're not supposed to fuck because somebody else is going to get mad. And every single one of them say that. Now, that's either a sync or that's coding. You tell me.
Well, like morality as such in perpetuity of like culture. Okay, so I heard a really good Tim Keller sermon. It has all
to do with culture. You've been on that all night, and I'd just like to say that you're on to something because it all has to do with culture.
Right, culture. Okay, so, and I'm not a material reductionist, so it seems at the very least, because some people would say everything's being pushed from behind. So it's like all the lemmings are being shoved over the cliff, and the ones that can fly do, and they have kids. And it's like that kind of a view of evolution, where it's like everything's in the meat grinder, and the best things work, or something like that. Like the solution gets found through just goddamn numbers eventually. And then there's the other option, which is like we're all being pulled, and so it's like you have a destiny. You were the lemming to learn how to fly, and you were never not going to be Neo. You don't have to ask why, you just have to figure out why. Like it's like, how did you know I was going to smash that cookie thing or whatever, like the thing in the kitchen? And she's like, it doesn't, like, causality doesn't matter, it fucks with our heads, but it's like it was written in the stars, if you want to put it that way. And it's like now you get to the experience.
Happened a fucking 120,000 times before.
So it seems, and I think Tim Keller said it really well, and he was a Christian kind of philosopher dude, preacher, but basically he was like, if you want to take out like the high level of like, how would I put it, commitment, if you just want to look at it objectively as possible, it's like the 10 Commandments as such were some level of like a way to weave a tapestry of differing people into a culture that could be not homogenized, but self-regulating. Basically, it's like, yes, you can all just drink meat all day and say for Valhalla and rape and pillage every village. Your culture might not last that long that way.
Right. Because I mean, it is if you read the Dead Sea Scrolls, there's a point where the disciples are like, why are you telling us all of this stuff? And then they, like, the Jesus character brings them into this room full of children. And it's a really kind of like psychedelic like episode because it doesn't make much sense. But the disciples kind of are like, who are all of those children? And they're like, those are the children of the future. But what that implies is that Have you ever seen? You're very into pop culture. Like, have you ever seen the third body problem? That
No.
seems like
Is
one
that the thing with
you,
the arm where they hit it and you don't know what it is? Is
well,
that what
the third body problem is written by a Chinese scientist, but it's a good series to watch because it's loaded down with Christian symbolism.
okay.
That aside, it talks about the idea that if you shoot something into space and you're off at the beginning by a little, that it has dire consequences down the timeline. And that idea is brought up in text, that it's more important what happens at the beginning than what happens at the end. Like, that's the whole concept of the Kali Yuga, is that things are fucking totally chaotic, but that's because there's no future anyways. However, at the very
Ten of
beginning,
Swords. The way of
you
thinking is
kind
going
of
to
have
change.
to, like, being disciplined helps your whole bloodline. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
And so does that idea of don't fuck people, because there's something in the Bible where it talks about, like, there's this idea of the great consummation, which is also called the great jealousy. Regardless, both of those ideas have to do with marriage. So there's this whole idea that we are married to God. God's the husband, we're the wife.
Sure.
Sure.
No, I know what you're talking about. The church.
But it talks about ideas like, so if you're married to someone and you have a child that looks more like your neighbor, that's because you are more loyal to the neighbor than your husband. Now, that's a no-brainer for an individual who understands where babies come from. But for a culture who really hadn't, like, put that together, that's a big concept. You get what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
They know that if you're fucking the mailman, the kid's going to look like the mailman.
Right. And there's different iterate. I mean, this gets into like the Ouroboros feedback loop of kind of consciousness and symbol sets. So at one point, in a McKenna sense, it was like there were just orgies in the cave and people were on mushrooms and no one knew who the kid was, and women had babies and bled, and that was magical enough where people worshiped women. That's where, like, matriarchy and the womb magic and all this stuff in the beginning was this feminine, and who knows how deep that rabbit hole goes. But the point is, there was a lack of knowledge in a certain domain, i.e. genetics or whatever, patronage. And because of that lack of information, there was an entire worldview that was assumed and it was lived out and all this stuff. And then at some point, whether it's good or bad, it's not, I mean, it's an interesting.
Okay, so
like once we understood genetics, it was like lineage.
A lot about, like, manifesting and so forth, right? Like the whole idea of if you're focused on the obstacle. So, like, there's this test, right, where they will put somebody in a car, they'll drive them towards a cone, they'll make the cement as wet as hell so that the person will slip, but the person will, when they get into the slide, they'll give them the instructions of getting out of the slide. But the person will never pay attention to the instructions they're given because they're too focused on the cone. However, when they blindfold them, they get them into the same slide and they give them the instructions to get out, the individual who's not paying attention to the cone will get away from the cone. And so sometimes we gravitate towards the obstacles. It's the same thing we were talking about with flow states.
It's like a negative flow state.
Right. But the same idea is with our concept of God, because God isn't really described. In fact, like if you look at like stories about Adam and stuff, Adam doesn't even know what God looks like. He confuses the Son as God. The reason is because he's only heard the voice. He's never seen it.
And that might be a corpus callosum, a unified brain, kind of hearing himself thinking. Who knows? I mean, who knows what the fucking trip is?
Mind, or whatnot. But the whole point is like, as far as manifestation goes, if you focus on something that is better than you, that's where you're going. So the whole idea of like a righteous God and a moral God and all of that is to for you to focus on, because that's where it's going to take you.
Right. It's a Jordan Petersonian kind of effect where it's like aim for the good and you'll hit something near it. But if you aim at nothing and you're
Hit something
selfish,
near the good.
yeah, good luck.
But that, oh, sure, good luck, and especially on a one-to-one basis. But how is that important? How important is that for your kids? Like if you're Abraham, who's told that his offspring are going to be as numerable as the sand, like it's important for him to understand all of these things that make not up underneath our culture might not make any sense. You get what I'm saying? Like circumcision or some bullshit like that. However, this is something that the Jews were persecuted a lot during the Black Plague, because the Bible had told them, or culture dealings of Jewish behavior had told them to wash their food beforehand. So individuals who weren't listening to that kind of were susceptible to get sick because they didn't understand germs. The Jewish people didn't understand germs, but the writings of the Bible understood germs. In the same way that we were talking about how bloodlines worked and the Bible understood that. Like there's weird stuff in the Bible that I've discovered recently. The water tables in the Bible. In the book of Job, one of the first books. It's like the first book. And it's like not for 1,300 years that scientific observation even wrote about the freaking water table. There's other things, like people have talked about antimatter being in the Bible. People have talked about the whole formation of the atom being in the Bible. And it's our culture that thinks that that stuff didn't know what it was talking about. We view that as superstition, so we don't read it.
Well, they might not have understood what they were dealing with and yet still been dealing with something like, Luke Skywalker could have probably fucking hung out with Yoda and not understood the Force or something. Exactly. Hold on. So an idea that just popped in my mind, it's totally a synchronistic thing. It's the movie Signs with M. Night Shyamalan, right? So the idea, and I don't want to spoil too much, everyone should watch it, is a pretty fucking decent movie. Mel Gibson movie with Joaquin Phoenix and stuff. But basically the idea is there's obvious, you've seen the movie, right? I assume.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah, it's classic. Raphael, have you seen Signs?
It's a sync movie. It's definitely a sync movie.
Well, it's a lot of things, right? Religious kind of existential stuff, all sorts of stuff. But the point is there's something that punctuates in such a way into the equilibrium of the life that they're living that makes no sense in a sense, and yet it is the thing that is the don't look at the cone guiding factor that you're describing, where it's like you never would have gotten there otherwise. It's the magic. I mean, in a sense, it's like there's books like the Tree of Life and the Book of Life, not the Tree of Life, but the Book of Life for kids. It's really psychedelic. Or Kubo and the Two String does a good job of this. Inside Out. There's various things that show the like the nature of the yin yang. It has to play with itself. I mean, there's parts of itself. The yin yang shows like a dot of each in each other in a sense. So it's like it's not just all polarity and nothing mixes. It's like there's levels of it. So even in the Matrix, like the she's a program, but she's an intuitive program called whatever, the Oracle. So it's like, yes, she's a machine, but not exactly. And then the other guy's like, I am totally, alpha male, whatever architect. And it's like, but there's elements of magic within him that are, one would say, I guess, intuitive, even though he wouldn't identify it as that. I guess what I'm saying is with the science analogy is, and it corresponds a little to what you're saying with religion, is like there are probably breadcrumbs, and whether it's our future selves, like in a Basharian sense, right, Raphael, where it's like there's levels of punctuation that occur, or even in an Interstellar, it's like, oh, the ones we're waving to, it's us in the future, blah, blah, blah. It's like there's this weird level of punctuation that occurs through the mystery, capital M, that necessarily guides the evolution of consciousness if it chooses to participate with that symbol set or directive or whatever.
Well, it's like, okay, so you have to think about, you and I were born after the sci-fi explosion of like the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Mm-hmm.
But you have to think that wasn't the common interpretation of, like, there was a lot of ground covered in that time period that we lost. Like there was these gradations of people becoming familiar with certain concepts like relativity or like 2001: A Space Odyssey was probably a decade and a half before you and I were born, and people hadn't really thought about shit in those ways, and so we kind of take it for granted. And that's happened again now because there's individuals who have only been born since the internet has been around. And even like COVID, like you think about how much different people will interpret the planet post-COVID than they did before. Like there'll be individuals who will not understand the culture that came before them. And that's what I think that sync is kind of like. I mean, because sync has a lot to do with like the hero's quest or the hero's journey or whatever, like these ideas of typographical religion and hermeticism where you're identifying types, like, okay, this is happening.
Types in process. So it's like individuation through archetype.
Right. Basically.
Yeah, that's what alchemy is. I mean, alchemy's old.
It's a way of identifying with self despite the culture. So there's a way to see things as they relate to the bigger picture outside of your culture. And that's wherever sync comes from, that's what it is. Do you get what I mean? Like this idea that people have always been talking about the same shit over and fucking over. And that's what that's like the main thesis of like Meta Egg, is the fact that people have supernatural or paranormal experiences. Those become fiction, and those fictions become more, they inform the next paranormal or supernatural experience. Mm-hmm. Like people interpret them through that lens. And each of these pop cultural events that we have, whether it be 2001: A Space Odyssey or The Matrix, are kind of like next steps, right? And how we explain things to each other.
Yeah, on the one hand, The Matrix is Plato's cave. So it's not new in that sense, right? Where it's just like, oh my gosh, wake up to the cave. On the other hand, the iteration is such that it's necessarily different in the zeitgeist stream of consciousness. So the Russian doll is a different doll. I mean, it's infinite regression nested dolls in a sense.
It's the same doll. It's just of a different size and shape or
color. Yeah. And that's, if anything, I mean, just because the way you felt about maybe me coming at you 10 years ago is how I more or less, I mean, I'm 40 now. So it's like when I look at like, 15, 18, 25-year-olds, whatever, TikTok kind of kids more, I'm just like, they don't even have the bandwidth to deal with the level of maturity to approach a text and get something out of it the same way we might. Like what David Charles Plate does with film, that's not going to happen on TikTok.
I don't want to hear synchronicities. I don't want to hear synchronicities anymore because of this specific reason. Because like a kid who's probably in his 20s who has this enormous synchronicity that changes the way he thinks, I'm not going to understand what the fuck he's talking about. And when he explains it to me, probably the first thing that I'm going to say to him is, I guess you had to be there, because it is such an interpersonal thing.
Right.
That doesn't mean I don't believe in synchronicities. That means I'm so fucking jaded because earlier today, I was probably driving down the road thinking of a random number like 72, and a diesel passed in front of me and I had a giant 72 on it. And so that has more to do with blowing my mind than anything you could fucking tell me. But that doesn't mean like I have all of these insights. Like sync has taught me these insights, but it's parked me into I feel painted into a corner. How the hell am I going to talk to people about David Koresh or fucking the hidden esoteric meaning of the Outer Limits series that aired in 1963? Nobody fucking cares, bro.
Well, here, so you got to orient your presuppositions properly, because if you David Bowie, who's a Capricorn and a great, you like Bowie, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, he was like, don't play to the audience. You've got to be your authentic self and know that what you need is going to meet you, instead of going berserk bananas trying to like overly relate, I guess. And
you have to, like, the whole idea of YouTube and everything. Like, if you go, like, I spent a whole big chunk of my life trying to figure out why sync videos failed on YouTube. And it's because they were completely complacent of the algorithm. But to use YouTube, you have to be familiar with the algorithm. Like, to use certain things, and this is why I don't want you to get me wrong. Like, anything that you did that was better than I did, that I was annoyed about, has nothing to do with you.
It's not even necessarily better or good. Okay, let me just say this. What you were saying earlier, and it's like there's a moral here, because there's a season for this. I don't think there's necessarily a card, maybe the Hermit card or something, which is Virgo, and you have a lot of Virgo energy. But it's like there's a time when, like, how to put it? It seems like, the stars go. it's bright, it's a brand new star. Oh my gosh, it's the, you know, the youth, the maiden card or whatever. And then you get to the crone, and the crone's like, yeah, I know. But there's I mean, I think, dare I say, the hardening of your heart. And not that you're doing this outright, even intentionally, but it's like we have to be careful. Like what's going to keep the magic going, what makes it relatable and translatable, basically, is inspiration and creativity. And if it turns you on, there's going to be someone who's turned on by it. It might not be en masse, it might not be, you know, the fucking next TikTok dance or something like that. But it's like those who are meant to pick up those signals, if you want to put it that way, are going to, just like in Contact. Like not everybody was obsessed.
So I don't know if that's true to the extent of like bringing up the Bible again. Anybody who had the truth is pretty much pressed upon. Now, I do not want to come at this from the point of view that it proves that I'm right because I've been persecuted. You get what I mean? But I do want to come at this from the idea that just because you have the truth or can predict something doesn't make you popular. Like,
in fact, quite the
Jesus
opposite usually.
Wasn't popular.
Yeah.
Moses wasn't popular. Fucking Cain and Abel, who was blessed by God, he died. Is that like? Well, I don't. Do you want to get blessed by God at that point? Like, do you want?
Well, there's not a strict causal category like this. It's not like, I mean, it's like, look, the rain falls from the just and the just. Like,
causal, bro. I think it might be cause and effect. I think we have a natural, unconscious inclination to denounce the truth when we hear it because it didn't come from us. When it says that,
well, we have to be the arbiter of our own experience. Even in a McKenna sense, he was like, you know, your experience is the primary data set for you. You can have hearsay, you can have culture, and these are not bad things inherently of themselves. But for the 10th generation Jew who's saying they said Moses saw a burning bush, I mean, there's only so much a direct translation of that experience into their daily life. In a sense, they're rekindling the flame through ritual and all this kind of stuff, which is what, you know, Star Wars is cool, and it's not blowing our minds like it did to the people who had, you know, when it dropped in theaters. Even though there's people who obsessively geek on Star Wars, it just hits different. So I don't even know.
It does, because it has it. It's just like that Ready Player One syndrome. And what I mean by that is like in Ready Player One, you have a guy who was born in 1972 who created what he called the Oasis, and then he loaded it down with references to his childhood. So you have all of these people in the future who are going back into like the 80s and 90s and
for Easter eggs.
Yeah. Right. They're looking for the Easter eggs to what happened in this culture that came before them. But that idea of 50 years from now, nobody's going to give a fuck about Ready Player One. It's like this perfect time for that idea to be placed into our consciousness. And I think that's why it works, is because we are that generation between the analog and the digital.
Sure, so, I hear what you're saying.
Easter eggs, as far as like what it's a term called intercontextuality that basically started with text, where you have H.P. Lovecraft or you have Charles Dickens creating universes where they interlock. This is what Marvel Comics did that kind of set them apart. That was really popular in the 60s and 70s and the early 80s, is the fact that all of their stuff was interlinked, you know? But now we're getting to the point where all of this stuff that was kind of like not linked together is being linked together up underneath this story narrative idea or concept that's called multiverse. So you have all of these movies that used to not be connected, like if you had different versions of the X-Men or different versions of whatever, now all of them are kind of seen as their own separate narratives working in a multiverse. But that's all because of the evolution of storytelling.
And modeling reality.
Bible, and you realize that there's all of these different stories, books for thousands of years written by different individuals. We do not register that all about the same topic. Do you get what I'm saying? So if
Yeah.
you have like the idea of a fig tree is perfect because fig tree shows up as a symbol in the earliest stories of Adam and Eve. And yet it penetrates throughout the New Testament and even in Revelation. The idea of this fig tree kind of encompasses a whole idea, no matter who wrote about it.
Also, relative to the Mediterranean. I mean, it's like fig trees aren't going to be written about necessarily in like a
It's what's Rome. It's one of the
Seattle tribe.
Rome starts under a fig tree because that has to do with that area's ideas,
which are made manifest
we don't understand
through the
because we don't
dream.
have fig trees.
Right. So our stories are different, and it's weird because okay, how would I put it?
Fig tree. That's my point. See, that's the sync. That's the insight of sync. If you have Jim Carrey wearing a green face in different movies, it doesn't matter. It's still the same character because it's like Jim Carrey's multiverse. Do you get what I'm saying?
Sure.
And even though those movies are made by different people, the nexus being is Jim Carrey.
Well, I don't know if it was you or Plate or who, but at one point somebody was geeking pretty hard on like resonators within film, like people's whole careers being like telling a grander story.
That's what I went for.
Yeah.
I went for that because I can talk to the actors. And I went for D actors because I have more access to them and they have no control over what they're doing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's not even an argument to be made because who knows is the answer. But I think one day we'll look back and be like, that was a very interactive game where we really did do, how would I put it? Like, I forget the actor's name from Twin Peaks and Dune. You know who I'm talking about.
Oh yeah, I know who exactly.
I forget his name now. Anyway, fucking Dale Cooper.
Yeah.
But he's obviously got a career. Or musicians is the same thing. Where it's like it feels like the muse speaks through people as an aperture for the divine, which is ultimately the mystery of the unconscious, larger than human consciousness, or something like that. So there's not egregore is too strong a word, but maybe like people can be catalysts for like lightning bolts. And it's like, especially it seemed like Hollywood was almost being like, all right, whether it was zodiacal or not, I don't know, but they'd be like, this person, like you see it nowadays with Timothy Chalamet or Tim Chalamet or whatever. It's like he's obviously hot in the zeitgeist, or had been, the Bob Dylan guy, right? And Dune and all that shit.
Bob Dylan, Dune. He's the new Dune. He's the new Twin Peaks guy. Right.
So, and in a sense, I think that gets into archetypes where it's like, look, there has to be a court, there's going to be a king, a queen, a jester, there's going to be these archetypes, and they can have musical chairs. I don't even know why I'm trying to talk about
McLaughlin. That's right.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Thank you. Mythocast.
Mythocast,
like I've seen him, I've seen you. I don't know.
He's a good commenter.
Before. That is good. That's a good assist.
So yeah, I mean, it's weird because this is like talking about, how would I even put it? This is almost like trying to talk about being a star child in 2001 before you've ever made that journey through the tunneling or whatever. So it's like one day we'll come to this apotheosis. I hope. I mean, my hope is that we'll come to this place of gnosis, which is what gnosis kind of is, where it's like you get right with the scripting of how things are, and you're not fighting it internally in such a way that you don't know how you fit. That's the Wu way. I mean, we'll never have probably the full answer to the point where it's like, this is it, Helen Keller.
Way.
W-U-E-W-E-I.
I know.
Wu way is like this like flow state basically with the
Wu way.
Yeah, it's like ride the.
What's another word for it? Fuck.
Surfing the wave.
Go ahead. You were saying.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm just kind of hoping that, like, I mean, at worst, we're a part of some magical fucking Jacob's ladder that we'll never understand. Like, you know, and it's like Rick and Morty, where it's like simulations within simulations.
Is it's even in the Bible again. The judgment day is if you find yourself in the book or not. But that idea of finding yourself inside of a narrative is a very popular idea. Stephen King again uses it in The Gunslinger, where the characters in the book realize they're in a book and have to save Stephen King from an event that actually happened in his real life. But he uses a lot of the key phrase like Discordianism from the trilogy The Illuminatus. The Illuminatus trilogy, written by Robert Anton Wilson, has the characters in the book realize that when they come face to face with the Leviathan, that there is such an outlandish tale that it can't be real. Therefore, they're characters in a book. Stuff like the Never-Ending Story.
I was just about to say that, bro. You're on the wave.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of
I mean, there's
course.
different degrees of like maturity. Never-Ending Story is like a kid's version of this, right?
Well, the movie for sure.
The book is all right.
The book is very heavy-handed, and the movie that we know from the 80s is probably only half of the book.
Yeah.
But that's what happened is Bastian goes into the book, and there's a scene actually where they climb a mountain because every wish that he makes, he forgets he's in a book. So they take him up to this mountain,
Well, that's
and
the
they
second
look
movie.
up and they show him reading the book. Like he sees himself reading him. And that's just like a fucked up concept.
Ultimately,
Like-
though, that's what it is. That's Holy Mountain with Jodorowsky, right? If you've seen that, it's
Right.
It's this mystery that's not apprehensible, but you're part of it. I mean, in a sense, that's what it is. It's like zoom out, laugh. You're a part of the big
Right.
cosmic joke. You're a character in the fucking movie. Like
Right.
you're a
that's the whole
medium in the media.
That's like the whole participation of movies. Like the reason they're popular and all of that shit is because they serve a function. That's the function that they serve. And so when you go there, you're identifying with your own story and you're realizing that you're the character that's in the movie right now. And that's why we
Consciously or
interact
not.
with movies. We're
Right.
talking to them. We're like, don't go into the fucking room and shit like that because we identify with them. And this is what happens with people collecting shit. Like they'll collect all of the fucking people from. Did you know, like according to the Drake equation, which is part of the Fermi's paradox, that if you look at all of evolution and you times it to what should be out in the galaxy, it's basically the Star Wars galaxy. I mean, the numbers are the same. If you look up to the number of species that are like spacefaring in Star Wars, they're pretty much in line to what they should be in real life. And that's what I'm trying to express is that all movies, although not true, hold a part of the truth. Like a bunch of people in the chat room have been talking about this sounds like Truman Show. That's fucking true. It might sound like the Hunger Games, because that's true. Like these things are how we interpret reality to express to other people in a way that they would understand. They understand because it's true.
Or yeah, it's
So all of the things, that's the whole premise of sync. These things are subconsciously things that we all know. That's why we respond to them.
I think there was an old alchemical piece of artwork, and I heard this from Terrence McKenna, and so I forget. I'm not going to quote it exactly. I haven't listened to McKenna in a long time, but he was one of my favorites. And basically, it's like Dormient's Vigil or something like that in Latin, and it's basically like while sleeping, watch, because we're in a dream. Pay attention, essentially, and the more you pay attention, the more patterns you're going to recognize. And the more patterns you're going to recognize, the more you necessarily work through them both logically and intuitively. And that means it's going to have an effect on the viewer. I mean, there's a lot of levels here, just like Truman Show showing us wheels within wheels, right? Wheelhouses within wheelhouses. So
I would like to show you guys something real quick because it has to do with what we've talked about. If you look up, if you go on YouTube and you look up Mel Gibson Gets High.
Oh boy, bong rips with Mel.
You mentioned signs is why I brought it up.
Okay,
what
yeah.
Because when I was talking about looking at sync logically, what I did was I pulled away from the sync community. I basically looked over like 26 movies, I think we did, with another sync head. And instead of telling anybody, what I did was just send him the movie. We watched it. We talked about it at the end of the week. And we like compared notes. And we used Mel Gibson because Mel Gibson had that whole Jewish thing that he had. And so he wasn't making any more movies.
That wouldn't have been as
unpopular. The only
unpopular
reason
today.
we did it is because it limited what he was making.
Okay.
Do you get what I'm saying?
It put he was not the popular child anymore, so you could look through a catalog more.
Right. It was not something we were doing for pop reasons. We were not doing it because we agreed with Mel Gibson. We were not doing it because we were attracted to Mel Gibson. We just did it to prove a fucking point.
Well, it's like
that
case
it doesn't
study.
matter the actor or the moral standing of the actor or what is trendy or what people have even seen, that the sync happens. The reason why it's called Mel Gibson Gets High is because he teaches people in his movies, all of them, how to fly. Signs is a little different. However, it syncs with other movies, and it is about sync explicitly.
Well, you could say Signs teaches you how to fly with grace in terms of the idea of providence or God and stuff like that. So it's a spiritual
Right.
flight, whereas Braveheart
Right.
is more of like a stand up for your rights and live your biggest life flight or something. I don't think there was any aerodynamics involved with that so much.
Okay,
But
you're pointing out the most obvious ones that don't have to do with flight because flight's not in them. But I mean, as you can see, like
there's plenty to do.
like, that's the whole thing of Mad Max. That's the whole thing of Chicken Run. Do you
I
get what I'm
forgot he was
saying?
even in that. Yeah. There's definitely archetypes that resonate, and this is one of the ideas that you used to, and people like you used to battle around a lot. Where it's like it's hard to speak about these things, but to do it intelligibly with people that are willing to be creative about it and not so egoic. That's where the magic lies. It's science, basically. It's intuitive science. I mean,
You're trying to look at it scientifically when it is not, like well, science is based off of cause and effect, right?
well, like observation and verification.
Synchronicity by definition is acausal. So how do you observe sync? Well, the only thing that you can do is observe sync that is happening to an individual that they're not aware of. Do you get what I mean?
Kind of, yeah.
So nobody's talking about Mel Gibson and all of the, like, he's in We Were Soldiers, which has to do with the first helicopter warfare ever. Do you get what I'm saying? And then I showed this to an individual who was very, very versed on tarot and Kabbalah. And I was like, what are all of the helicopters? Because you have the helicopters in like conspiracy theory, he has the black helicopters. We Were Soldiers, he has the helicopters. Mad Max, you have the helicopters. Just helicopters over. Bird on the Wire, they say, oh, you remember that time that we saw a UFO and the UFO comes around the corner and it's a helicopter? And then it's just helicopters. What is the helicopter? And they were like, oh, it's a Merkaba. And I'm like, well, shit, that totally makes sense. Like this one idea that was not mine, all I did was register. All of these things were happening in a row. They had linked it to all of these occasions where Mel Gibson is mentioning himself as Moses or playing the role of Moses, which is kind of weird sync in and of itself, that Mel Gibson, who views himself as a Christian and almost anti-Jewish, is more in tuned to the Moses archetype than the Christ archetype, which is a weird thing in and of itself. And then they attach that to all of the helicopters being about Merkaba. And I'm like, bro, that's not my sync. Like, I found all that shit, I showed it to you guys, and then somebody else goes Merkaba. That's kind of like validation for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, there's a reason people sit back and listen to Beethoven or something and they all get off, even if they're not all musically literate or instrumentalists or, can read music or whatever. There's this gets into Platonic forms a little, but it's like there's some underlying thing of truth, beauty, truth, what are these things that maybe undergirds it to the point where there's a resonance. Once again, it's going to be on a spectrum and it's not everybody's picking up from the same thing, just like you were saying with pointed out with the Ready Player One stuff. The guy who programs that original construct, things that are near and dear to his resonant experience are plugged in, and that will necessarily never hit the same way to the people trying to find those Easter eggs, even if they're smart enough to grok what he's put down or whatever. I don't know. It's a trip because basically it seems like we're all tumbling down the rabbit hole together. That's why we call it Team Rabbit Hole. Or originally I was like, because back in 2012 or whatever, when I started waking up and listening to people like you, I was like, we are all getting red pilled before that was like a term. And I was just like, we are all going down this fucking rabbit hole together. The royal we in a Lebowskian sense. So it's like, there's no avoiding it. And even McKenna was like, the more we get past 2012 for whatever his, reasons, I Ching and otherwise, he's like, it's just going to get weirder and weirder. And then we have to talk about it. And That's all anybody's ever done anyway. You know, the people that were like, well, I feel like there's moral, repercussions to my actions. Like they're maybe going to be more religious, or the people that are like, fuck it, I don't care. They're going to be more hedonistic or whatever. So it seems like we necessarily pachinko towards the archetypes that we are anyway. But then becoming self-aware of that process is what makes an alchemist or a wizard or a witch or whatever. It's like you're kind of getting beyond the self to the point where you can, never-ending story, look at yourself as the one reading. And in a sense, that's the ten of swords. It's the end of a way of thinking. You're not thinking like a child anymore. You're thinking like an integrated participant. And I mean, there's probably levels to that. I don't know how into like, new age channelers like Bashar and stuff
it's like a dangerous realm. I mean, like, what I get out of the 10 of swords is that, like, although we are talking about pop culture and ideas and concepts that may or may not be true, this is a dangerous realm.
Well, they have consequences. Just like in Inception, they say an idea is like a virus. Once you plant, Inception's a great example, because if you go into the subconscious enough and plant an idea, it creates a jungle of its own.
So just because we're back to the tarot card from the beginning, the one interpretation of it that I like is because sword is a mental cycle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as you correctly said, in the Rider-Waite tarot, you have the individual lying on the beach with 10 swords. Well, what's behind the beach?
New lands, probably.
No, it's the ocean, because it's the beach, right?
Oh, yeah.
But what that means to me, at least, is just the end of a mental cycle, where then it gets washed away again by the sea, which either could be interpreted simply as emotion or some grander aspect of consciousness. But I'm not sure if I would say it is dangerous. Maybe it's dangerous to predefine belief systems if you want to hold on to them. But other than that, I don't necessarily even see the card as anything negative, to be honest. In terms of Ten of Swords.
It's negative in the sense that it's how would I put it? The lesson is learned, and now you're going to necessarily be thrust into a mystery that's beyond your current stasis. So that's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable to be like, well, shit, I just got my PhD in psychology, but now we realize we're in a simulation. What do I make of that? Or whatever, right? There's plenty of people right now who are like, I went to school and I learned a trade or a skill. It's like robots and AI are going to outsource you. Like it is what it is. Like we don't need lawyers anymore. We can just ask ChatGPT to get us out of a pickle, legally or whatever. Eventually, I imagine. Anyway, the point is, I mean, the little slogan on this thing was, "I must evolve." It's what do you do when you're confronted with the finitude of the timeline that you're on? Like when you outgrow your shoes, do you keep wearing shoes and get blisters? Do you look for new shoes? Like, what are you going to do? Like, you have to change or face the consequences of that. And I think for better or worse, and I don't think there's just one kind of, whatever. There's not like one shoe fitting this metaphor perfectly, but it seems like whether you're Terrence McKenna with a 2012, novelty wave kind of theory, or Hopi prophecies of the sky being spiderweb or whatever, it seems like we're entering a time when the dream becomes self-aware enough, but it's out of balance enough that like it's nightmarish and we don't know how to handle it. Like we're like, oh my gosh, the ecology, oh my gosh, the geopolitical situation, oh my gosh. But then the real task turns into like self-mastery. Even though you never fully slay the dragon, you've got to like ride that shit and like learn how to train your dragon. That's like what the whole trip is on that. And I mean, they're all Inside Out. I mean, they're trying to teach kids, if you've seen Inside Out, it's like Jungian Buddhist concepts. It's like, you are not your emotions. They're valid, real things, but you are not ultimately those.
That's what I felt about the Matrix. And that was because of my own reality tunnel. I was reading a lot of Buddhist texts at the time. And when I went and saw the Matrix, I interpreted that, you don't have to, but I interpreted that through a Buddhist lens. Like, reality sucks, basically. Reality is pain. Like, being aware of the Matrix is not necessarily a comfortable thing. And though that concept was ready for me because of that time period. However, Inside Out, I love to use Inside Out because that's like more true than true. Like you can have modern ideas of consciousness have more to do with Inside Out than, and is that useful? Like, there's this whole idea that certain people have that movies are evil, but they are useful.
I would like to talk to one of those people. Be like, okay, that's like McKenna was like, language is a virus from outer space. It's like language is useful, but it might be also,
Yeah, it's
two
dangerous.
sides of the sword here, 10 swords. It's like you can, the Bible is even very explicit. It's like the tongue. I think even in Egyptology, it's like Horus or Anubis rather with the dog tongue. It's like the tongue is like the giver of life and death. You can kill somebody with your tongue, or you can build them up. You can do all
Well,
sorts of
that's
stuff.
thought too, right? Like the 10 swords, you can kill somebody with thought. You can overly kill somebody with thought.
Mhm.
Like you can totally change things, reality with just thought.
Like Orwell puts it, like 2 + 2 is 5. You could bash that into someone's skull so much that they don't know what to believe
That's
anymore.
reality.
And that's one of the disquieting things, I think. And I'm not doing a very good job of keeping my personal practices very well lately, just given the zeitgeist. But it seems like if you guys are listening to this podcast, don't just sit around. I mean, how do I put it? We are in an interesting birth pang process, it seems. And whether we become star children or whatever is going to happen, I don't have like I don't have a winning ticket to tell you what it is, because I don't know. But it seems like we've all agreed to be here now during these times, and that we have the obligation to try our best to aim towards to something that we would prefer for ourselves and others. And it's easy to, in our mammalian kind of meat suits based off of biology and chemistry and all sorts of very real things. They're not ultimately true, but they're very real VR precepts of apprehension that we have to transcend while simultaneously being in the world and not of it, is what it says in the Bible, right? It's like you are in the VR meat suit, but just because you get pissed off does not mean you chop off the Roman soldier's ear, Peter, party foul, or whatever, right? Like in the Garden of Gethsemane. So it's like you have to learn how to manage your lower nature, but to even be aware that you have a lower nature to trip.
Aware of your lower nature. You got to be aware that you even have a lower nature. And I think that one of the main cultural ideas that is not conducive for us is that we've got so much info getting into our heads.
It's a glut
that we kind of just say fuck it and go towards the animal. And I don't think that that's a good idea.
No, I just did that on my 40th birthday. I never drink alcohol anymore, and I was like I was too scared to trip that day, basically, because of Iran, all this shit's happening. I'm like, this might make a bad trip. I don't know. Basically, it's like, I don't know if I want to talk to DMT elves right now or whatever, right? So it's just like, I guess I'll have a 6-pack. I had a great Heineken or Hefeweizen 6-pack. I forget who, Hofbrau or somebody. But anyway, the point is, good beer. I enjoyed it, but then I was also just like, this isn't. I mean, I'm not ever going to moralize people could drink, smoke, do whatever. I'm a very free spirit, but it's like I hit my pocket where it's like smoking and drinking. I've gotten the lesson. It's the Alan Watts thing. Once you get the lesson, hang up. It's like you can always go back to your ex-girlfriend and make out. It is not the same as when you were in the relationship with the girl in the first place or whatever. So I guess what I'm getting at is, and everyone's going to have to do it differently. Holler for a reading sometime if you want to astro reading. I do them so I can help you understand your nature of the machine that you're in. But the point is, everyone's got light and dark. Everyone's got proclivities, and not everybody's going to be tripping up on the same thing. So some people can handle booze and never have a problem, like some of the earliest monks and C.S. Lewis, and people were just at the bar drinking and writing stories. It's like good things can happen with alcohol, right? It's not a bad thing. But then you get to a place where essentially what you're saying is like you become aware of levels of your being in a sense, and it's like, I mean, it talks about this in spiritual stuff, but you have to get to this place for yourself. You have to cross this bridge yourself. No pulpit is going to teach this for you. You have to get to a place where it's like, am I the dog that wants to eat my vomit? I totally can. Like, we can always do whatever we want, right? And then you get to a place where it's like wisdom is like knowing better and like transcending. Even in the Tree of Life, which is an interesting Terrence Malick film, they show this dinosaur where it's like it can kill this other dinosaur, but it chooses not to. So it's this emergence of compassion or something like that in the idea. But you don't always have to repeat your behaviors and stuff. And I think right now, with the world stage as it is, we're being played like little fiddles. If you've lived long enough, I mean, our age, it's like 9/11, yep, or COVID or whatever. It's like we're all kind of used to psyops and power plays and stuff. But I think we're going to have to change how we're thinking about things. And I don't know what that means. If we're going to have to, I mean, I listened to a lot of Bashar lately. Raphael doesn't as much lately. This guy who channels an alien, which is surreal in and of itself and questionable possibly. But the point is, we're going to have to gaslight ourselves into a narrative of some kind. Even McKenna was like, if you're not making plans and being, telling your own story, you're a part of somebody else's story. And in a weird way, you're always a part of somebody else's story. So you can't really avoid that.
Yeah. If you don't take responsibility for yourself and your life and your actions, somebody else will.
Yeah. But that's happening no matter what. So like right now, I don't think I have, I can't just sit here and tap my ruby red slippers and have fucking peace on earth. It doesn't seem. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe I'm meditating wrong. Yeah, but we've talked about this on the episodes years ago, where it's like, am I the last one to wake up, and I'm just like too stubborn and selfish? Like, it's like everyone's like Truman showing, and like everybody in their own lives is like, all you have to do is be Christ-like. All you have to do is like, whatever, walk on the water. You could do it. Just take the red pill. And we're all just like, nope, I want to just keep watching Fox News or CNN and being told what the world is. Anyway, I'm rambling, but the point is, I think, especially with people like you,
it's gotten worse.
It's gnarly. It's an echo chamber. But we have to we have to hit the pavement to say, I don't want to fucking fall off the bike anymore.
Well, I mean, that's like what the alternative realm used to be, that. And it feels like, I don't know if it was like flat earth, but it feels like it was psyoped
on multiple levels.
Like it was deconstructed and then taken over by Russell Brand.
Well, look, sure, it's like punk
rock. Of course,
thing.
Although in a way, I mean, if I want to be pro or paranoid, you can decide about it. It would also kind of give it validity, that there's something, not only something to it, that the whatever powers that be, whoever wants to keep you in some illusions, is capitalizing on it, watering it down, pushing it out, publicizing it, diluting everything, and blasting everything. Almost, I'm thinking about this in a way because I've experienced, even with some of the content I'm producing, and you have, I'm sure, as well, that this is being scraped and being put on the front, so people think maybe that's what it is, just like you showed with the flow book, right? Just give a small bit and people are like, yeah, they don't really understand anything, and maybe they're not even going to go looking for the thing. But that kind of means that the thing apparently has some value and some importance, and maybe even in terms of the, how should I say, sovereignty over this reality, that if you understand more of that, you may have more capacity to be responsible. And of course, certain individuals that are narcissistic, psychopathic, or whatever,
playing
that's the
last
roles. Thing they want you to do. They rather have you control them control you, and not get any of your own ideas, right?
Well, like the Bible says something to the effect that the kingdom of God is like leavening of bread, where you put yeast in, you don't really see much, and then it like fills the whole thing. I would hope, and I think, and maybe this is the beauty of the sync, even though populism is lame in a sense, it's like, man, everyone likes Daft Punk now. I was there at their first concert. It's like, whatever, everyone likes Daft Punk now. It's great. Now, is it the same as you? You know what I mean? It's like, it is what it is. So it's like, there's this magical awareness. And I think the North Node is in Pisces, almost the end of the degree. We're at this point where we're like, oh shit, we are magicians. Oh shit, language does matter. Oh shit, where I put my focus does have an impact. Like, and for whatever reason, whether it was agreed upon pre-incarnationally or whatever, or we're slaves to a reptilian fucking, loose,
or we are all Boltzmann brains who just spawned about 2 hours ago. I'd like that.
we're little thronglets, and we don't even know it.
For real, though, like, okay, so there's one thing going back to the Bible that I have been stuck on for a while now, is the fact that God says the same thing to Noah as he says to Adam. And this is a big matter of contention, because he basically says refill to Adam. And everybody's like, no, that's mistranslated. It just means fill. It doesn't mean replenish or refill. But he uses the exact same words for Adam as he does Noah. So if Noah is implied at refilling, why not Adam? Like this whole idea, it's even a Philip K. Dick idea. He said, if you think that this reality is bad, you should see some of the others. But what if that's what's going on? Like this total, I mean, we can see that in our fossil history, right? This epoch of destruction, epoch of destruction, epoch of destruction.
With slight improvements. Biologically, or
slight improvement.
Like, now birds can fly. Okay, there was a comet. It sucks. It's Ten of Swords. I must evolve. Like we're being pushed off the thing, and it's off the cliff, essentially, existentially. I think everything psyop wise is full blast largely, and it's like whoever's basically, it's a weird moment, but it's like, are you going to go in the Ewok village? Or are you going to go on the Death Star? Kind of thing. It feels like pretty much right now. It's like, what are you going to do? I mean, whether it was COVID jabs or whatever, it's like, and Age of Aquarius is very much about teams. It's like, which team are you on? Are you a Trumper? Are you a Antifa? What are you? And it's like, you can't, in a sense, you are more than the crowd you participate with, and in another way, they are a direct reflection of your values, actions, beliefs, whatever, birds of a feather kind of thing. So what I was getting at though is And it's not like one date. It's not like 2012, mine, thing. But I think ever since about 2012, we've been pushed into another groove of the record that is a little closer to a singularity, or however you want to put it. And everybody's feeling.
But I think the biggest thing about 2012 is you have the
galactic
crossing
of the galactic.
Sure.
That's a big deal.
Like that stuff could or could not be. Let's just stick with facts. Let's talk about cell phones. You have the mass exception of cell phones by 2012. Like our whole everything changes as far as like news goes.
Yeah, it's our Gutenberg printing press.
Information is deceived or how placed into
deceived indeed. Yes.
Everything
it was a Freudian.
Because phones are an extension of the internet. Internet it's the new fire. I mean, basically,
it totally changes everything.
Yeah,
and it's in my inspection of David Koresh in Waco, that has a lot to do with it too, because what he's talking about is God has technology and has put him there at the exact moment that the internet starts. Do you get what I'm saying? Like there's this idea of that somebody already knew where we would be when, and certain things have to happen for that to become a reality. Like World War II, a lot of people think is like a negative spot in human evolution.
Well, like anything, it's got light and dark to it. They were fashionable. Hugo Boss is dope.
Came out. All of technology came out because everybody was in this race to kill each other. Sure. Does that make sense? Yeah. And so out of that comes all of the comforts and luxuries that we have now. This is the whole Prometheus thing, right? Out of the destruction of inventions comes the luxury of inventions. This is why the gods hate us, is what most myths say, is like everything has to do with, hey, you can't give them fire because if they get fire, they might,
burn them down the house.
They might have industrial warfare. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. No, I hear you. And I mean, there's a lot of presuppositions wrapped up into that because we could go in circles about it. But yes, everything is like positive and negative to some degree. So though there was a lot of publicized negativity with the Third Reich and stuff, it's logical to some degree to see why Germans were thinking, because of an evolutionary paradigm, that they were the apex predator essentially in the human species, and they were just like, well, we got Wagner's and Beethoven's and Einstein's, like we're kicking ass and taking names, like we're the best. This is kind of what I was saying a little earlier with your and I'm not saying you're doing this outright meaningfully, but you got to just be careful. And I guess if I had any advice to you, it's like, just don't get serious too much, because how do I put it, like one of the magical moments in film and books usually is a little like when we get humbled, because the ossification happens, entropy happens, like there's cycles of it. It is what it is. In the Christmas Carol, it's like you got so wrapped up in the material trip that now you're just an asshole, bah humbug, whatever. And he has to have his like heart reopened through kind of fear and all this stuff. All we have to really do, I think, not to popularize sync, because it's like everybody's syncing with what they're needing to resonate with necessarily, and then that can change, and it does. So it's like, the guppy turns into the fucking fish, turns into the fucking next thing. It just is what it is. But I guess what I'm saying, and this is just unsolicited advice for you, I don't know why I'm telling you this, but it's like, never forget why you're doing it. Like, find the joy of why you're doing it, and that joy will be the light that inspires others to be moths to the flame. It does not even matter about numbers particularly, but we're here to make a mark in time space with our essential selves. We are making marks necessarily, like we're with our time and energy and how we do stuff, but it's like our legacy, if you want to put it that way, energetically, is like, how were we participating with the dream? And there's no real wrong way, I don't think, to do it, because you can be sitting in a cave saying, "Oh, I'm in a dream," or you can be out there trying to, get all the real estate you can, or whatever. These are all very different ways. Just like there's I Ching hexagrams, there's many ways to apprehend the Tao, right? So it's like one hexagram isn't better than another hexagram. It's just a different modality of.
Right.
So I guess I don't know why I'm telling you this, because way earlier you were kind of like, well, I'm jaded and I'm tired of this and I don't give a fuck about y'all's things. It's like, we've got to be careful. And I'm not. I'm not an OG sync. Yeah, I don't.
I want people to be sync heads. I just don't want to hear about your golden beetle experience, because I've already fucking lived it. Every fucking like the shit that I could tell you guys.
Oh no, I don't.
You don't want to hear that.
Well,
Like, you
that's what this is.
want to hear that.
We
You
do.
don't want to hear that.
You're
Like,
presupposing.
nobody's asking me. Like, it's not. There is a
Don't
certain
hide it
amount
under a
of
bushel.
datedness,
No,
and
I
there
hear
is
you.
a certain amount of like me looking around and going, "Do you guys even know why you're sinking anymore?" And in the same fashion of like, do people even know why they make movies anymore, or do people even know why they're making fucking rock albums?
Did we
anymore?
ever? Did we ever?
I think we did. I think we did. I think we did it because there was this we had an inspiration to do something, and now it's no longer inspiration, it's a job. We clock things. You know what I'm saying? And in a lot of ways, like sync, a lot of people view sync as clocking. Like, oh, well, I put up 12 fucking syncs on goddamn Facebook. I'm a better sync head than fuck off.
But they'll have to die to that.
Fuck out of here,
Okay,
bro.
so that would be the equivalent.
I've had one sit down with Zach Bauer in a one tarot reading. You could make a fucking book out of that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like, well, I watched How to Train Your Dragon, the live version, the other night. You guys don't want to hear that shit from me. Like, all of the shit that was going on in my head when I was watching that shit, like, and understanding the undercurrents and the subtext and what like.
So, look, two things in the Bible. It's got the
I have an idea for a new series: Sync Confessionals. You know,
Jaded Wizard Confessionals. On the one hand, I totally understand what you're saying, because it's just like, look, you have a lot of Virgo 12th house energy with Venus and North Node.
I'm also Leo. Like, a lot of the things that you were saying earlier about what our responsibilities and stuff are, and humility and stuff like that, those are problems for Leos. Like, and I wasn't even aware. I wasn't even aware. I didn't even know. I didn't even know what a Leo entailed. I didn't know that I was like a walking pitch perfect fucking Leo, because nobody had told me. You know what I mean?
There's always room to grow.
You understand that there's all of these. There's a type, right? There's a type, and there's this reoccurring.
Look, that's a good example. You don't become aware of something to lean into it exclusively. So if I'm like naturally musical, it's like, cool, I'm good at music, but like maybe I should learn how to dance too. So you become aware of, just because you're a nocturnal thing doesn't. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. Part of the beauty of astrology potentially is to be like, oh my God, this is a reason. It syncs, it resonates. It's a why as to why I function in the machine the way I do, to a degree. It's not absolute, but it's pretty fucking spot on. And then I think the next level of that is to not just trope and meme yourself and be like, well, I'm a Gemini, I'm just going to talk all day, or I'm a Leo, so I think it's all about me, or I'm a Libra, so I'm going to sit here and just hold space, or whatever. You go, okay, so I'm experiencing a lot of fucking chocolate cake, and I never get vanilla ice cream, so maybe I should be aware of that. It's a tool for awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. We can start winding it down.
We have to, like, certain narratives and storylines are more of a vehicle for us understanding ourselves than it is a vehicle for us understanding characters. And I think that's like the main thing. Like I watch a lot of people's like, don't you watch movies for entertainment anymore? And I was like,
it's hard to do after you're a synchead a little. I'm mad.
After you're a synchead, you want to watch all the movies. Like, you don't, like, you're not even watching them if you like them anymore. You're just watching them to see if you get like that little dopamine hit of like, I knew that was going to be in here and it's fucking there. You know what I mean? Like, I knew because this actor had 4 42s that there was going to be a 42 in this movie. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's things that you can do that are predictions where you get validation. Like, I'm on the right track. Sync has led me through this process of logic. It's not magical thinking, although it's related to magic. It's not really magical thinking. And it's not apophenia or pareidolia or all of these other like kind of talking points that people use to argue against it. It's to like
demystify it or whatever.
Right.
Because in a sense you are projecting and reading your own interpretation or whatever. But like I
become aware that it's happening. You don't have to become, you will become obsessed, but you don't have to be obsessed. Like, there will be stages where you're like, oh my God, the 23.
I was just thinking Jim Carrey's movie 23. Yeah.
Like, there'll be times of that. There'll be times where you're like, I don't want to ever fucking see a goddamn 23 in my life. You know what I mean? Like,
but that's the nature of a religious experience.
23. You've knocked me over the head with the 23 enough. I get the damn 23. And then there's no happiness here. I'm not saying that this isn't, there's no happiness. You're not going to be a sinkhead and have a baseball card. It's not going to happen. Most of the other sinkheads probably won't like you. They might text you on your birthday. That's it. Like,
well, based off your chart, I can see why you're saying so much. I remember I did say at some point, no, you're going to be naturally jaded is a strong word, but with all that Virgo, you're like, look, I don't want extra stuff. And being a Leo with your Pluto and Libra opposite your moon in Aries, you are a rugged individual. You're here to do individual stuff, even though you're grokking the collective thing. So it's a little like the crotchety old wizard in like the Mickey Mouse thing, where it's like, I'm just doing my thing. Fuck you, apprentice. And the apprentice is like the TikTok sinkers now or whatever. You're like, I don't care. I've got this shit on lock. Fuck all y'all. You're messing it up. I guess what I was saying in any weird way is like, if we can, the grace we want and hope for from others, like it's good that, I mean, I don't need to get into like, is Disney a fucking Rosicrucian psyop and all this stuff. But the point is there's things we've tasted. There's mangoes, and sinks are so different for everybody that like, when are you not sinking? I mean, eat some acid and you'll see, right? It's like everything's in sync in some way. But basically, you've tasted the mango. You don't necessarily want to hear everybody fanboy or fangirl out of their mango experience, but we've got to be careful not to deflate it past a point, because that is the evolution of culture and mind that we would prefer. I think we would much rather have people being like, well, I do psychedelics and I look for meanings in culture and symbols, than someone just being like, whatever, you know, bah humbug or whatever.
Okay. I am.
You see what I'm saying though?
I'm saying, okay, so I built Meta Egg because I want people to share their crazy fan theories with me.
It's a safe place. It's a safe place.
A safe place for fan theories that have to do with pop culture. If you want to send me your sinks, that's fine too. Go fucking ahead. I don't care. Might not read them. I would share them with people of your own age. I would share them with people who have a common experience as you do, because they're going to understand it. I don't talk about my sinks with people. Well, I've seen shit. I don't even fucking remember it. I don't remember them anymore. I just know that in that space, when they happen, I was like, this is a reality. This is what fucking happened. I know it's true. I can carry it with me forward, but I know that I'm not going to fucking remember this. Like, there's certain things that I've done where I know I was right. Like, if you look on Meta Egg, I made a point out of saying that every episode of WandaVision was a tarot card. Later on, when they did the sequel to that series, it was proven to be true. But nobody, even though I got a lot of views on that, nobody fucking believed it. And
but
nobody cares if I was right.
But epiphany is not for the crowd necessarily. You say eureka because you've made the connection. And if other people grok what you're picking up, cool. And the culture can move forward in that direction to the capacity that they're able to resonate with it. But you should know, you're a scientist. Like, everybody's a scientist, and you are practicing observations and verifications through your own tunneling of reality. But then you do want to make sure that you're not just talking to fucking figments of your imagination, which is even a debatable point, because what's not imagination? Right. But it's like, there is a value, I guess you could say. I mean, this is where religious groups get their deal, where it's like, look, you can have epiphany, but if it's exclusive to a point, it's such a subculture thing that it's almost, I mean, it gets into temperament and all sorts of stuff. And now that I'm realizing you're an Aries moon, it's like, you don't have patience necessarily for the people that are like, you know, you're on the 10th lap of your marathon and they're on the second, and they're saying these Nikes are great, and you're like, bitch, I was here before Nike was a company. So it's like, and it is what it is, and it's cool. I'm just saying, if you're aware of that,
like a 90s perspective. I mean, that's like an old analog perspective. That's like when you were listening to a rock group and your friend, you had friends who introduced you to rock groups, and if they were like a newcomer, they didn't know what the fuck they were talking about. And that's like a problem that I have, and that's like what you say that's in my charts and all of that nonsense as far as
pearls to swine kind of thing.
Stands for. I had to figure all of that shit out. And I had to like, and then when I figured it out, I fucking identify it with it. And I'm like, you're not going to tell me anything that I don't know. Like if I hear one more person explain to me the whole Carl Jung gold beetle fucking story, I will claw my goddamn eyes out. Like
But there's probably a lesson here in that where it's like, can you? Now I'm getting psychoanalytic on you or something. Are you able to imagine? Can you play with the idea that you can find novelty within these? It doesn't mean you have to bathe in the fucking theories of the golden bug from people that you don't care about, because past a point that's not in your fucking design to do. Like, you are more of an isolated individualist who happens to be channeling basically like a Sybil or something, and it's good to verify outside of oneself in a scientific kind of method way where it's like it gives you confidence, I guess, or to a degree that you're not insane to start. I mean, you could sit there and just be rocking yourself saying, 42. But aren't you glad you met fucking Douglas Bowles and Alan and all these people? Now, things changed. Like, even in the disciples thing, they all got together around this phenomena called the Christ, and then they all went down their different rabbit holes. And some people, Peter stayed Jewish, and Paul was like, "Nah, let's take this out and spread the word," or what? Like, people apprehend it differently because of their dynamic. But I guess, if there's anything I'm trying to get out of this, and it's not saying you're bad or wrong, but it's like, we have to stop thinking in a way that's comfortable, because whether it's through psychedelics, through meditation, through fucking apocalypse, which means unveiling, like, we're necessarily being ushered into discomfort, and less preferentiality in a sense, but there's gold there. The alchemy, diamonds are made with heat and pressure, and we're in a pressure cooker right now. And I guess what I'm saying is, especially, it's kind of not a grandfather, that's too geriatric, but it's like, you're an OG synchromystic.
Oh, well,
And
yeah, I am. I
know.
absolutely.
Hats off. You got me
I'm
into it,
standing
dude.
on my front lawn and telling people to get the hell off of my block. Like,
but Mr. Wilson learned something from Dennis the Menace at some level. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah,
I guess I'm just saying, leave that little.
You've heard the third rule of Clarke, right? The Arthur C. Clarke made these rules, and one of them that's used over and over says something along the lines that any technology is indiscernible to an undeveloped culture. It will be interpreted as magic or whatever.
Yes.
But there's another one where it talks about, like, an old professor, when saying something is or something is possible, will be proven right, and when saying something is impossible, will be proven wrong. Along those terms of, like, the old kind of get set in their ways that stuff is impossible, but it takes the destagnation of a new generation to come in and say, no, that's see, this is the thing that I'm saying. I'm not saying discount your scenes. I'm saying, don't fucking tell them to me.
Don't come on my lawn.
You're just going to pile up and confuse me if you do that. Adhere to them, figure them out, be aware of what they are and what they can be. The ones that are the most important, try to figure a way to communicate those to other people that will be useful to them. But do not think that just because it is important to you, that it's going to be important to anyone else. And unless you figure out how to fucking connect to the other person, because there's a certain amount of narcissism with synchronicity in general.
It's inherent. It's a solipsistic epiphany.
Absolutely.
That can be verified externally, and that's the mystery, I guess, where it's like, everybody's on their own rabbit hole. Nobody has the same fucking movie going. Nobody on earth has the same apprehension of the Tao. So it's only so helpful for people in a Western movie to shout over to Star Wars, "Hey, watch out for the Indians on the cliff," or whatever. It's like, it's only so helpful. But if we can pull back and be Buddha awake about it, it's like, there is some value there, even if it's just, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to get too meta about this, but it's like, it's all grace, I guess, is the best way to put it. And if we can, I understand. You're like, I'm in a sushi place. Please don't come up to me with your pizza. I only care about eating to such a degree, and I definitely don't care about pizza. So don't come at me with pizza.
I'm not hungry anymore.
Yeah.
I understand what these things are. I understand how important they are to you. I want you to develop some way of telling the story to others that relate to them. But I have my own issues dealing with stuff that I've experienced and making you all believe it, because it's a tricky situation. This is a very, very tricky situation. And you're right, like the 10 of Swords is kind of appropriate because, I mean, that's what I'm all about. I'm about killing the old way that we used to do this shit, because I feel like it's been figured out, and I feel like that it's being used against us, and like the way of like the Bella Illuminati, the Taco Bell Illuminati thing. Like that's obviously something that this community grappled with, that was used post the Epiphany, and for marketing. And we're not doing that for ourselves. We're so busy trying to get each other to like listen to each other and trying to be the face of sync. I'm not interested in being the face of sync. I'm interested in saying there's a whole bunch of faces of sync, and these people are predicting shit all the time, and nobody's really picking up on the usefulness of the thought, because they're so busy trying to make it their thing.
So what do you think the utility of sync is in your experience from all the mining that you've done? Because you're a little, Gimli in the mines of Moria of sync, and you're like, I know all these mines, and no one else has walked through the fucking mines of Moria, or very few, and we're like, we don't know this shit. This is amazing and new. And you're like, been there, done that. What do you think the utility of where your journey has been is? I mean, obviously it's unavoidable. You're on your own journey, but like, given that you're like Mr. Miyagi, maybe you're not doing the same thing as the Karate Kid anymore, and the Karate Kid's a nuisance. Like how do you see what you're doing as a wax on, wax off kind of adage passing down? Like, I mean, obviously you're creating content, and that's kind of your mark on the trail. Like you're leaving your own breadcrumbs, and those that will find it. But and maybe that's the extent of it. Maybe you're at a point, honestly, I'm speaking for you maybe, but it's like, maybe you're just like, I'm going to keep walking through these dark woods, like the fucking, No,
I mean, I have different things planned. Like it's not all about sync either. I have a bunch of different vehicles that I'm good at, and I'm trying to like place all of those in positions where they kind of just generate attention on their own. Meta Egg has not been successful. I think that's why what my initial intent was to sort of use the already existing Easter egg landscape of YouTube, which was very popular at the time around 2019 and everything. Like there were all of these channels who were trying to tell you things about movies that you didn't know. But the whole point is that not all of these things are intentional. And so trying to get people to believe that somebody did something intentionally to a movie is okay. Well, we all know that now. Like we all know these Easter eggs of hidden messages that are put in Star Wars or put in Disney movies, whether it be sex or something that we have that's a little bit more concrete, like their studio where they learn to animate in, that's put in every animation movie, or so forth and so on. Like we understand the ideas of Easter eggs, but the idea that there might be unintentional, subconscious Easter eggs is not in the common consensus past like psychoanalyzation. Like the psychoanalysts have looked at, they looked at fairy tales, right? And they determined that some of those fairy tales had subtextual meaning that may or may not have been intentional. And those things are used now to market in a way. Other ideas that are in movies, sort of like the hero's quest or whatever. Like we know for a fact that post the popularity of Star Wars that people were putting myths in stories, but there's also this idea that it happens anyways.
Yeah, it's a substrate to the archetype of storytelling. I mean, people are only going to watch fucking Andy Warhol sleep so many times or whatever, you know what I mean? They'd be
it's almost like you only have to hear about the fact that he did that to get the punch of what he was doing, and nobody's going to go and return and watch that. But like where if I'm dealing with Mel Gibson, or if I'm dealing with Andras Jones, or
He blocked
on
me.
MetaEgg, I
He's great.
have an actor named Keith Coogan who's coming up,
Okay.
where I'm talking to Keith Coogan. I'm like, I noticed this in your movie. I noticed this in this other movie. I noticed this in this other movie. And they can usually finish the sentence for you. They can be like, oh, that also happened in this movie. Have you seen this? And then that's like some sort of validation to the fact that, no, wait, who gives a fuck what it means? The shit's happening. You get what I'm saying? Like, if you can go to the actor, which nobody's paying attention to, they're all stuck in their own little world of saying, like, the actor did it intentionally, or the actor's trying to brainwash me, which is happening. I don't want to say that that's not happening, but I want to also say that the fact that it's happening is only them mimicking what naturally happens. It's like them noticing or being aware of this shit happens anyways. Oh, wait, what if we did it intentionally? And syncheads need to do that. Syncheads need to like stop trying to make videos about other movies. What happens if you write a script about sync? And people are already fucking doing this. Like if you look at the newest season by Jordan Peele of The Twilight Zone, he bought the rights to Twilight Zone. He made a new season. If you watch it, it is a synchead's dream. Everything has to do with people realizing that they're in these syncy situations. And so even if we're not successful in it, we have had we've impacted culture, and we will continue to impact culture even if we're not known. And you gotta go at this with some sort of humility. You've got to understand that the stuff that you see is validated, but that doesn't mean it's going to be successful. And it doesn't mean that you're going to get 4 million views, which we have. When we got together and we did Up Underneath the Tutorialization of Joe Alexander, we all helped create Back to the Future Predicts 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
You know, my name's on that video, even though I didn't really contribute much, because most of what I already contributed, people already knew. The stuff is there. The stuff that happens to your life, that happens over and over, you can get validated on it, but that doesn't mean you're going to be a millionaire, or it doesn't mean you're going to be the Messiah, or it doesn't mean that anybody's going to recognize it but you. But you have to realize that's just as important. Like,
well, you said it. I mean, the philosopher making the Philosopher's Stone might not sell it in Walmart, but he made the Philosopher's Stone, so that's all that matters. The journey is the destination in that sense. Ten of Swords. Success is, I mean, I think we're gonna laugh one day and be like, every idea, every thought, every moment was so. It's like in Waking Life, where they're like, it's a divine moment. I mean, we tend to, because of materialism and consumerism and all this kind of status culture and stuff, we're like, well, if I don't get this many views, dude, by those metrics, trust me, Team Rabbit Hole is not successful. But I don't, and ask Raphael, we've had plenty of conversations about this, where it's like, I'm not doing it for success, which becomes problematic as a business model. But
we're elitist.
Like,
I mean, we have to be aware of the
it's
fact
not elite.
that
It's like the founding fathers. They were all jamming on the like, we need to revolt, the Sons of Liberty shit, and not everybody's on the John Hancock big bill there on the Declaration, or you see what I mean? But it's like, but they were a part of a movement, and one day we're probably going to realize it was one movement. Like all of creation was sinking, and it was gestating in very unavoidable, like prescribed ways.
it happened quicker than we thought.
Always.
We view things as segmented by time, but really, like, when you look at everything the sync book has like created, it's a big deal. I mean, they pay for their own servers, so you can go on syncbook.com right now and watch videos that are uninterrupted by copyright claims because they've bought their own servers. Mm-hmm. However, nobody's living pretty. Nobody, like, you might look at it as sort of like what you said earlier about like 42 minutes and stuff. There was already sort of like an in club, but that was actually just like a shell that had been put over a community that had been doused with multiple like missile fires. You know what I'm saying? Like, we had been accosted a couple of times, and so we had like compacted up. But in all actuality, there's no like There's no boy club. You get what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
when you have a synchronicity, it is going to be a thing that is personal. It is going to be a very personal experience, and it's going to be validating that you have more worth than the whole rest of the world thought you did. But you're not going to convince the whole rest of the world of that. Even the ones who have experienced it are going to sort of come at it through a competitive lens or some sort of like jealousy lens.
Depending where they're at or their charts are and all that. It reminds me a little of this. There's this art piece in Buddhist culture. We can start winding down if you want. We've been talking for a while. I don't know if Raphael's getting done.
Oh no, we've been going for a while. I mean,
but there's this art piece of statues where I guess the idea, and I'm not a Buddhist, but the idea was like Buddha was giving this lecture or whatever, little sermon, and basically one guy kind of like, I think he was just sitting there, and one guy kind of like smiles. It's like the roots of Zen Buddhism or whatever. It's and that's not for everybody, dude. That's not everybody in that room got that download or however you want to put it. But it's like, it was beautiful and it's good. I don't even know. I think I'm saying something you understand.
Sermon. Buddha holds up a flower and one
says
person
nothing.
understood what he was saying.
Yeah.
Even though he didn't say anything.
Right. So that's
sort of like
that's sync, man.
That's a sync, right?
No, well, that is sync. It's
that
like for those of us to
understood what was happening externally with Buddha was the same thing that he understood internally, and there was like some validation in that.
Correct.
But not everybody else got it.
Right. Right. And I mean, it's tricky, but I imagine, who knows, I'm projecting now, but it's like, what would happen if that guy came up to Siddhartha after the fucking sermon and didn't say, and he's like, hey man, I want to tell you about my experience. And Siddhartha was like, fuck you, get off my lawn. Like,
I mean, he probably did, but Bowie did that. Bowie, like, David Bowie would have people who come up to him after a concert and be like, I think it's really cool that you played that Nirvana song. And he's like, get fuck off. You know what I'm saying? Like the man who sold everything or owned the world or sold the world or whatever is not a Nirvana song. It's a David Bowie song. But individuals who might not have known who Bowie was they didn't experience it that way. Do you get what I'm saying? Like that song was
so that might show us a place where David Bowie could have learned a little grace and compassion, dare I say, where it's like, because his ego is tripping on it in a sense, and that's to be understood. There's no getting around it. We all want credit and accolade to some degree. It's not unavoidable. It's socially, it's part of a dominance hierarchy. It's a lot of levels here, so it's like not bad. Anyway, I'm kind of rambling about this stuff, but I think
maybe we should wind down. I want to thank Raphael because he's
He's the caterpillar in Alice's Wonderland. He chills on the mushroom and smokes.
Talking about Alice in Wonderland, and don't want to give new movie. Actually, don't recommend this, but we somehow stumbled across this on Netflix of all places because Andreas visited me and we were watching like on a whatever online streaming services. Are you aware of Alice in Borderland? It has
I've heard of the
nothing
Japanese
to do.
thing.
Yeah, I just saw the title. I was like, oh, maybe this is something fun and nice, and it's completely unhinged, if you ask me. But all right, it's like a Hunger Squid Games in Tokyo. Whatever, it's crazy. Well, anyways, with tarot cards though, or with playing cards. So yeah.
Well, tell us a little. I mean, you don't have to go long into it, but obviously you've been doing a lot for a long time, and I appreciate that. Whether you want to hear the kids on the lawn say thanks or not, but appreciate that. And what you said, you had a few plates spinning that have little or nothing to do with that identity. What do you got in the cooker?
Oh, well, okay, so if people are interested, there's the 42 minutes. That is a podcast. If you go to thesyncbook.com and hit the radio tab and hit 42 minutes, I did about 5 years of weekly conversations with scientists, professional athletes, actors, whatever, psychoanalysts.
Dude, this show is largely not built off that exactly, but like, because you guys did that, it gave me the idea of like, inside the actor studio with cool people. Why not?
Yeah, it was a great idea, but it was a lot of work, and most of that is due to Douglas Bowles, who did the show with me. He wrote the copy, made sure that everything got edited, and we did it as long as we could. Out of that, I became kind of like I helped a lot with the management of the Sync book as far as like promotion goes, and then I kind of separated and created Sync Tank, or not Sync Tank, fucking Meta Egg. Meta Egg is on Sync Book, but you can also find it on YouTube right there, where I basically just tried to rename Sync as a metaphysical Easter egg. And like, that's where I did the WandaVision tarot card. I tried to look at Star Wars and MCU and stuff that was in popular culture. And then I've started recently moving over into what we call like movie walkthroughs, where I pick Andreas or a Paranoid American from the Think Tank. That's right there is Blade Runner with David Gill, who runs the Philip K. Dick blog, Dickhead, Total Dickhead. Other individuals who are on the YouTube circuit and so forth, talking about different movies. We also did with David Plate, where he would mix albums with movies.
That's his thing.
Yeah, he does a really good job of that, but nobody really like interviews him for that. So you can tell he was pretty passionate talking about that stuff. I've done Alex Fulton, Almost Glick as an actor. I've got another actor, Keith Coogan, who's coming up in July. Another actor, David Urey, who's coming up. And another actor, Andras Jones, who's coming up. Where I'm basically just using them as mini conventions, like people do these conventions of pop culture, and I'm talking to them strictly about their work, unstripping the new agey talk and the conspiracy talk, and we're just talking about what they actually do. Also, there's the Saturday Morning Vision Quest. I think there's like 13 of those, where we look at different cartoons and their relationships to conspiracy theory. Some people have mentioned it in the chat tonight, I think, Mythoclass and stuff like that. But I mean, there's a lot of good, like the ones we did on Montauk, that right there, the Freeing the Montauk trial. I think we did 2 of those because that was crazy.
It's not surprising. I mean, whether it's David Plate or Frank Zero M Sig and just all these people, it's not terribly surprising. You're same, but different, kind of, right? It's like
I'm in good stead with a lot of weird sync heads.
Yeah.
Like I try not. I mean, there's some that I have gone friction with, but like Jake Kata, I'm not total friends with Jake. I've worked with him a lot. We ran the sinkhole together and stuff of that nature. Until we kind of had a falling out. And although I do talk to him, I don't really base my work completely off of him. Neither he bases his off of mine. We kind of use each other every once in a while. Frank Zero is an old school guy. Like he's been in sync for years and years, always talking about cartoons.
I guess what I was saying
I know Goro Adachi and I have the same birthday. He's one of the first guys who did sync.
Right.
And Goro, he actually, if you go to videos, he was like the last video that I did where he basically, the Vegas spheres, artificial contact, he basically predicted the Israeli war. Like he said that he wrote the entire script. I just put everything together and said the script, because Goro Adachi does not do interviews and he does not do live action camera. So we basically made a deal where he would write the script. I would say the script. I would show all of the visuals that he needed. And then he said, will something nuclear happen? And that's the day that the war in Israel started. And we haven't really done any videos after that. But Goro has been right more than I would like to admit. It's fucking weird.
All right. I know you turned me on to him. I'm just Facebook friends with him, but I don't know him personally. It's funny, I guess what I was saying earlier is just like birds of a feather, and there, not every one of the knights of the round table go in the same direction. They all have different trips, but I feel like the Grail quest is similar for all y'all, and the Grail quest is understanding the fundamental mysteries of reality through mediums of culture and all this stuff. So like I said, I do appreciate what you've been up to. I haven't seen all your stuff, but I mean, I hope we have no beef. And you're in Colorado. I'm not there now. I'm in Alabama, and it's like we switched places. I'll probably be in Colorado at some point. I do hope we meet up and hang out at some point. I probably won't drink a beer, but you can have one for me. But yeah, you're a cool dude. I've always thought highly of you and all the crew you're doing stuff with. And if it wasn't for the snow that you guys were shoveling, a lot of people wouldn't be walking down the same sidewalks. So I promise you, I've told Alan this. He's been on here. A few people from SyncBook have been on here. this wouldn't exist, and a lot of my way of being, like, it was like stumbling into a dojo or something and being like, oh shit, you mean I can learn this karate
you've
move?
come
Holy
a long
shit.
way,
Will,
man.
look at what you've done, Will. Look at what you've done.
Yeah. And look, I gave Mr. Wilson a slice of pizza. It's all good. Like, he won't kill you. He's got a gun, but it's not loaded. No, I'm kidding. No, yeah, it's like I said, it's good to it's I don't know how to explain it because I don't want to over spiritualize it, but it feels like a bunch of like Gnostic souls waking up in a new iteration of the dream or something like that, where it's just like, oh, we've done this shit before, we're gonna do it again. Let's figure it out. Let's have some
that's what
fun.
it feels like a lot of times. It's almost like you're very familiar, like you realize you're talking to somebody and you're talking to them in a familiar way that you've like known them, but this person's got like 6 million views. You know what I'm saying? And their existence is so far removed from what you've experienced, and yet you're talking the same language. And that's like how it is with sync. There's a lot of like, well, how do I know you? Like there's a lot of weird, either people finishing their own sentence, and this stuff increases. Like you talked about the Sync Summit and so forth. There's been a couple of times where individuals have gotten together en masse in the same location, and every time that I've experienced that with others, it's almost overwhelming. Because everybody's seeing the same stuff and saying the same stuff, or as soon as you think something, someone's saying it out loud, and you're like, yeah, I got to get out of this room. You know what I mean?
I want to tell a quick anecdote, and then we can kind of wrap up. So back in the Boise Sync Summit, I think it was the first one, but I'm not sure, 2015. I went there. You weren't there. David Plate wasn't there, but I met a lot of people, Alan, Hannah, all these people. And Douglas, shout out for letting us sleep on your floor.
Wilner.
Yeah. I don't know if Steve Wilner, he wasn't there, but it doesn't matter who was there or not. I mean, Monad Magoo was there. He was cool as fuck, even though like that.
Oh, Monad Magoo. Yeah.
He's cool dude. He's a Virgo, man. He's interesting dude. But anyway, it's funny because there was a moment where we were walking in the Boise Hills or whatever, the foothills, and there's a line in a Beatles album where it's talking about like there's a bunch. I don't know if we had been talking about it or if it had just been an idea in my mind or something, but basically like the idea that though the panoply of consciousness and all the characters on the stage are writ large, there's like, Where's Waldo amount of characters out here, obviously, there might be only a few operators that this is going to sound so solipsistic. I got to be careful with saying this. It felt like a few wizards got together and there was more consciousness. That sounds so weird. Yeah. Like a condensation of consciousness in such a way that was like operators got together and not just
right.
Not just plebeian.
But
Where's
like
Waldo?
It changes your trip. Like when you're around all of those people and you don't really necessarily have to, like, you don't have to use the same overly wrought way of communicating to explain an idea. You can just say a word and all of these other individuals will like add to that idea. And you're like, how did that just happen? Like that
jamming on magic
normally would have taken a week of communication, we just did in like 5 minutes. And everybody's smiling like they're on the same page. It's a really weird experience.
Well, it's a subculture. It's what happens when a subculture's jamming. I imagine it's the same thing at a Grateful Dead show when everyone's like, I know this song, and they're going to jam this way, and I'm tripping, and you're tripping, and huzzah, or whatever. Right. It's same idea. It's a subculture on a vibration. But there's very explicit things with synchromystics and just all this stuff, and it can be polarizing in a sense.
Side to it. There's a weird energy that like comes along with it, and like the thing that I get annoyed with is the fact that that's kind of like if somebody mentions that in a regular setting, like the eyes roll. You get what I'm saying? But when you're in that setting of multiple individuals, it's almost like a regular thing. Like you're sitting there in the environment and you're talking about this and you're like, oh, we're at mile marker 42. And look, there's a 42 over there. And holy shit, 42. Did you guys know that I was 42 years old? And it's like, if you were in a normal occasion, it would be like the conversation would stop. But you get all these mutants together and it like generates
it becomes its own thing. It's like an egregore of a certain level of magic.
It's wild.
It's cool.
Crazy.
It's cool how it works. And the thought that crossed my mind, like Niels Bohr, or I think I'm thinking of him. There's a few people that got together in like 1912 or 20 or something, a bunch of physicists, and they were just geeking out. And then that's when they came up with quantum mechanics and shit like that. It's like real cool shit can happen when you get together with people that aren't exactly like you, but on a similar wave.
They're open to it. Like
yeah.
in their reality tunnel, that is completely admissible. And so there's no denial of the event. When the event happens, it's like everybody's on board. And I think that's the thing. It's like when the stuff, like maybe you have synchronicities, like if you're an actor and you get the worst movies ever, but afterwards they make sense to you. You're like, okay, well, that was related to this. And it was like that character just stepped into this movie. But nobody experiences that with you because they don't speak that language. You get all of those people who speak the same language and who are looking at things in the same way. And it's like there's a shorthand that fucking evolves. And there's just this, all of a sudden, people aren't even saying, they're not expressing to you their syncs. They're just like snapping. And it's like, oh, yeah, I know that just happened to you. I said a word that you were thinking. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like
it's musicians, like musicians jamming.
It's like a bliss. It's
like jazz musicians when they're jamming, they don't even have to come from the same neighborhood. They're just like, okay, I hear you. I know what you're doing. You surprised me. Right. And in a weird way, and maybe this is a good place to wrap it up. Miles Davis said it best, I think, but this is a tried and true method. It's like learn all the music theory you can, learn all the fucking techniques and all the little data points, and Kubrick was born here and all this stuff that you want, and then just let it go. And when you let it go, when you reach the the end of your rope or whatever, you realize you're on another level of the rope and it's a whole new trip. I think that's really some of the things that I've learned most from synchromystics like yourself and the people we've been talking about, where it's like, it's good to know the language, but then you can't be so beholden to the language that you're stifled by it. So it's holding on loosely and being willing to, you don't want to just be the, it's cool to be
being able to hold the idea without identifying with it,
right, without crushing it. I mean, it's like the Buddha with the fucking flower. It's like, don't pluck it, like appreciate it or whatever.
Right.
So it's tricky. Anyway, dude, it's good to get you on here.
This is the best conversation that you and I have had.
Well, I would agree with that. One of the only ones, other than like, why do you want my chart? You're harassing me, kind of stuff like that. But no, I'm really glad we could cross this bridge. Hopefully we meet up in, time, because people like Andreas and Raphael are meeting, and David Plate knows Andreas. I feel like this is, now you got to be careful because you don't want to put too much gunpowder in the fucking keg, but it's like, this is the kind of thing that we need in these times to help orient people into the power of their magic. Now we can geek out and be like, oh my gosh, there's corporations that want to hijack and all this stuff. It's like, cool. Well, guess what? We can create our own subcultures and sigils and all these things. We can do it. We can do these things in greater, or whatever. So it's just like, y'all enjoy the fucking ride. Find the others. This is what Team Rabbit Hole is all about. It started with people like him geeking out and showing up and doing the work. And I got the secondhand smoke and I've been high on it for years. So you guys know that this is what we got to do. We got to find the others. That's the whole fucking maxim. So you're going to have your own trip and have your own fire to tend, and you can't, but like, we can encourage each other. We can inspire each other. We can be comrades on this weird journey. And I think that's what we are anyway, but the more we're aware of it, the more fun it is. So anyway, any last thoughts from either of y'all? I'll shut the fuck up.
I'll just thank you very much, Will. Thank everyone in chat. I think it was very interesting and illuminating and passionate of you, what you shared. I enjoyed it.
What a Leo with a moon and Aries. Fireball.
You have the last word, Will.
Oh, I thank you. I want to thank you for sure for staying up tonight. And thank you, Jim, for asking me to come on.
Always. It literally, for years, I've been pecking at you, been like, I think Alan was like the 42nd.
There was a time where I said no to you. You asked me to come on, and I was like, I'm not doing interviews right now because I wanted to interview Goro, and that was a long time. It was
probably our 42nd episode
because I was holding out. I had made this pledge that I was not going to do interviews until I got to interview Goro, and that never happened.
Well, I'm glad you held on loosely to that, maxim, because here we are and it happened. But yeah, thanks for giving us your time and energy. Hope our paths cross, and keep up the good work, man. Whether other people see it or fucking millionaire status or fucking hermit in the garden playing with gold, it's all good.
Please go watch some Meta Egg. Go watch WandaVision, and if you know anything about tarot, watch every episode of WandaVision, and you tell me if it has anything to do with tarot.
in a weird way, all the universe in a grain of sand. What doesn't have to do with everything? Everything is everything, kind of in a weird way. So
Yeah. I think this was intentional, though. I think that sync has taught me how to realize that there are certain things that are intentional. Like there's certain things that you see, and if you know the artist, you know the artist work, you can kind of glean what they were getting at.
I would agree.
I think there's also, I learned that by looking at stuff people weren't intending, and then trying to determine what's intentional, what's not, instead of just saying everything is or everything is not.
Word. Well, I'll geek out with you privately at some point, I'm sure, because you're cool. And Raphael, once again, thanks for holding space.
Thank you.